Welcome to the second day of the week. Welcome aboard the AM show. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. As always, I am in good company with Bernice Abubakar. And from us to you, we cherish you. Thank you for joining us on the show. We'll be serving you the news shortly. Right after that, we'll be engaging Samir Bing, Executive Director of the Parliamentary Network Africa, who is our guest for that review of the papers. And from there, we get into our big stories. And first off, there appears to be calm in the camp of the opposition NDC following an intervention by former President John Dramani Mahama and the Council of Elders of the National Democratic Congress. A meeting was held yesterday to resolve the impasse that ensued after party leadership reshuffled its parliamentary leadership. Today, we discuss this and how the party will turn the current issues around if they can. Joining us for that conversation, Kofi Adams is Member of Parliament for Buem. Kina Likimani is Programs Manager at Odikro. And of course, Dr. John Osai-Kwapon is a CDD Fellow. But also coming up on the show today, we continue our conversation on the domestic debt exchange program by government. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is asking individual bondholders and groups yet to sign up for government's domestic debt exchange program ahead of the deadline. In a national address on Monday, Mr. Ofori-Atta said it was crucial for bondholders to join the program, considering the importance of a sustained economic recovery backed by an approved IMF program in the first quarter of 2023, as well as the need for economic stability. But what exactly is the picture beyond what the finance minister is painting for us? We'll be joined by economists who will dilate on the issues with us. Professor Charles Aka is economist, Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research at the University of Ghana. We also have Dr. Saad Idrisu, economist at the Louisiana Economic Development. And then we were talking to you this morning about precision quality in industry as a tool for system and mindset change for job and wealth creation in Ghana. Ghana's economic growth has not created adequate numbers of jobs for the growing labor force. The youth, who make up more than a third of the country's population, lack education and skills. That conversation features later on the show. We'll be joined by the founder and CEO of the Design and Technology Institute, Constance Elizabeth Swaneker. But as always, the show is about you, it's for you. So here's what you can do. In the course of the show, send us your thoughts, whatever you think is right, whatever you think is going wrong. Send it via the live stream with the hashtag AM show. And at the tail end, when we activate the phone lines, let's hear from you. On that note, we settle for the news up next. Welcome to the news. Let's start off talking money. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is pleading with individual pension bondholders to accept government's current 15% coupon rate at 5 years of maturity as the offer stands with their bonds. This was in response to the call from the individual pension bondholders who picketed at the ministry on Monday, demanding a total exemption from the domestic debt exchange program. Mr. Ofori-Atta says it is crucial to include the individual pension bondholders to enable government to secure an IMF deal by March this year. James Kwesi Aveji was at the ministry and came through with this report.
These individual pension bondholders, some of whom can be seen with visible medical conditions, are united in one voice, a demand for total exemption from the domestic debt exchange program.
In fact, we want our money. We don't want to be part of this program. If he can't even pay the coupons, he should give everybody their money. Let us live our lives. Do you understand me? Because I don't have anyone to take care of me.
Some said their survival and payment of medical bills depends solely on the coupons from their investment.
I invested my money because that is what I'm going to live on. I don't have anybody. As I sit, I'm not well, but I have to come and sit here, breathless, trying to breathe. And you've taken my money. I mean, this is unacceptable.
Convener of the Individual Pension Bondholders Forum, Dr. Eduana Nientwi, vowed the group will keep on picketing at the Ministry of Finance at least 1 hour each day until government listens to their demand.
We will continue to be here until we are exempted, regardless of the expiration of the invitation period. We'll continue to be here.
Are there any timelines you are giving the ministry?
No, the timeline is just that if today we hear that we have been exempted, tomorrow we won't come. If we don't hear, we will come tomorrow.
After some 15 minutes of dispersing for the day, the group was recalled to have an audience with the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. But their anticipation for a positive response from the minister was short-lived.
Looking at all of the categories, we say, well, these are retirees. Let's include those 59 who will be 60 this year and give them 15%. So the fight that we are presumably fighting here is a difference between 15 and 18.5%. The cost of that may be that we may not get an IMF clearance. The challenge that we have is that we have an economic crisis. We do have an economic crisis. And I think if people truly want the elongated bonds, that's easier to do. It's less burden on us.
Dr. Edouard Anienchi said the group will deliberate over the minister's response and act appropriately.
This is a section of, we were 5 that were left to come and address us. The whole forum, we will send this to the forum. This is what the minister has said. And I believe whatever the forum says will be what we are taking up. As at now, the forum hasn't changed the position. We are meeting this evening, and we'll take it from there.
Although it is currently unclear whether the individual pension bondholders will sign on to the current terms, they are expected to continue with their picketing tomorrow. James Kwesiaveji's report, read to you.
Now, after weeks of bitter argument and rancor within the opposition NDC caucus in Parliament, the members of Parliament have resolved to back the new leadership announced by the party 2 weeks ago. The removal of Haruna Idrisu as minority leader brought significant strife and cracks within the party, with some 72 MPs signing a petition asking for the decision to be reversed. Now, after a meeting with the party's national executives and Council of Elders on Monday, the caucus has resolved to fully back Dr. Cassia Latoforsen and his team in the new minority leadership. Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante has the rest of the story.
Some political analysts had warned that a decision to remove Haruna Idrisu could destabilize the party's quest to win power in 2024. But chairman of the party, John Senesedu Nketia, says the concerns of the NDC MPs have been properly ironed out.
The challenges that arose out of the announcement of the new leadership of our caucus in Parliament have all been resolved. All concerns have been addressed. So we're just looking forward. We in NDC believe that sparks of truth emanate from clashes of opinion, and that was what has just happened. The challenges that we've gone through in the past few days have produced very beneficial results.
He explained that the party will fashion out modalities for decisions on how the caucus in Parliament is to be run.
The framework for organizing and leading our caucus in Parliament. It was work in progress, but it had not been completed. I think that these current challenges have brought the issue back on the front burner. So one of the takeaways from this meeting is for us to go quickly and expedite action on establishment of the framework for the running of our caucus in Parliament.
Dominic Ayeni spoke on behalf of the 70 MPs who had initially called for the reversal of the decision and pledged full support to the new leadership.
The NDC this evening stands united. And that is because we have the people who can stand behind us so that we march into 2024 a victorious party. Those who thought, as the national chairman has said, that this constituted an existential crisis that was going to decimate the party, that was going to cement any cleavages that emerged, are going to stand solidly behind Atufos and his leadership. There will be no turning back from what has happened today.
Chairman of the NDC's Council of Elders, Alhaji Muhammad Idrisu, said all MPs were fully on board and the NDC caucus in the House were going back to hold government accountable.
The beginning of the meeting. This is the end of the meeting. So you can see from the excitement that the problem has been resolved. We don't have any problem now. Our only problem is to win the 2024 election. I will hand you over to the national leader and chairman of the party.
So it's been weeks of rancor within the minority. Finally, the party has been able to get over this, and the party has announced that they are backing the new leadership led by Dr. Kesela Atufos. It's been hours of meeting here at the Justice D.F. Annan Auditorium here in Parliament, and the party has been able to resolve these key issues. Let's say they are going to back this new leadership, and all the specific issues that came up will all now be dealt with, and the concerns will be taken on board. Reporting for JoyNews, Kweku Asante from Parliament.
Revolution has come to stay. Revolution has a long way to go, but has come to stay.
Well, the party, meanwhile, wants its members to trust the new minority leadership. It says the Dr. Kesela Atufos-led team possesses the needed acumen to help the party win the 2024 elections convincingly.
We wish to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation to the national leadership of the NDC for entrusting confidence in Dr. Atufos, the illustrious son of the Central Region, as the leader of the minority caucus in Parliament. We must say that this is well-deserving.
Dr. Richard Esiedu, the Central Regional Chairman of the National Democratic Congress, spelling out details why the party did not make any mistake in their new appointment in Parliament.
The Central Regional leadership of the NDC wish to sincerely plead with the entire members of the minority caucus in Parliament to give their support and entrust confidence in the leadership of Dr. Atufos. We must all understand that leadership evolves. Leaders will come and go, but the caucus must not be divided. Let us all give the maximum support and rally around the new leaders to deliver as we did for our previous leaders.
He needs all hands to be on deck so the party can focus and execute its dreams and aspirations.
In actual fact, with Dr. Atufos as the minority leader, the leadership of the Central NDC is confident of winning 20 parliamentary seats and over 60% of presidential votes. Honorable Dr. Atufos is a modern leader fit for this era. And the NDC in Parliament is better off with his leadership, considering the roles he has played in the executive, legislature, and the party. We urge him and his team to stay focused and committed to the purpose. True stars rise to the top, not by chance, but through purpose and passion.
It is the belief of the Central Regional Branch of the NDC that the new leadership will be supported so the party will remain a united bloc for progress to be made.
Now, students of Bamaho MA Junior High School in Wa are stranded after fire raised a makeshift structure being used as a classroom. The students have had to study under dilapidated structures and inadequate furniture, which forced the authorities there to put up these makeshift structures constructed with firewood, straw, and old roofing sheets. Rafiq Salam reports the students need help to get their academic lives back on track.
The increasing rate of pupils enrollment, coupled with dilapidated structures which could pass for their traps, has forced management committee of the Bamao MA Junior High School to go in for these mixed structures. The Bamao MA Junior High School has a total population of 321 pupils. 2/3 of these pupils are in Junior High School 2 and 3 and are comfortable occupying these two classrooms. Their junior colleagues, unfortunately on their part, has to hold classes under these mixed structures. They have been constructed using firewood, straws, and used jaded roofing sheets.
In a class of 74 pupils, which has been equally divided, the fragile ones are at this mixed structure. But even under this structure, it isn't the best. The sun is scorchy and is aggressive.
Apart from the inhumane and unconducive learning environment they have been subjected to, there is also the fear of the mixed structures housing pythons and other dangerous insects. There are uncountable times that pythons fell from the roof of their mixed structures, disrupting curricular activities. Yusuf Abdul Rahim is the headmaster of Bamao MA Junior High School.
Here we have Form 1A and there we have Form 1B. And in fact, whenever it threatens to rain, it means we just have to close classes. Then sometimes we are in our classes, we are being visited by reptiles. Should I say fortunately or unfortunately on my part, I have been a witness to those occasions. There was an occasion where we were visited by a snake. I was in the midst of the teachers and then we all took to our heels. Just before the end of last term, we were visited by 2 monitor lizards. One came to one of the classes, then the other also visited the other class. And our classes that day were all disrupted.
The Parent Teacher Association, PTA, concerned about the plight of the pupils, mobilized and started the construction of these 2 classrooms, which has gotten to the roof level. The 2-unit classroom project has some support from the Ward Central Member of Parliament, Dr. Rashida Sampelpu.
To be used to do the roofing, there are 15 packets of roofing sheets meant for the roofing of these 2 classrooms. It's important for us because we know that it will enable learning experience to go on as we expect.
However, the woes of the pupils were further worsened hours after the 2-unit classroom block was completely roofed. The mixed structure for Junior High School 1B was gutted by fire, crumbled like sand, and straws turned into ashes.
So at the moment, what we are trying to do is to how we can fix it temporarily for classes to start, so that we looked forward to see how we can solve it permanently. If we look at the school, there are no structures. In fact, the people are more than the structures. All these things you are seeing, they are classes. So we are managing with this for the meantime, hoping that the assembly will come to our aid.
The 37 pupils lost everything, including their furniture. They have no classroom and only loiter about while their colleagues are seriously studying.
As our class got burnt and then the furnitures are also burnt.
So at the moment, what are you doing?
We are roaming about, fetching water and then fetching sand. Taking them to the new building they built to make classrooms for us.
One municipal chief executive, Isaac Utayr Mumin, who was at the school to assess the situation, expressed shock and promised a temporary fix of the situation.
Just this morning I had information that a makeshift classroom is bent. So we are here to see what is actually the situation on the ground. And true to it, the furniture is gone and the makeshift is also gone. So right now we're going to work out to get them a number of dual decks at least to start learning, whilst we look at a permanent solution for the school.
Reporting for JoyNews, Rafiq Salam. Wow.
A brand new state-of-the-art eye clinic and surgical center set to dramatically reduce the waiting times for local patients seeking treatment for sight loss conditions within the Techiman municipality and the Bono East Enclave has been opened. The new Holy Family Eye Clinic consists of new consultancy rooms and one theater that features the latest innovations from the ophthalmology industry. Bishop of the Techiman Catholic Diocese, Most Reverend Dominic Yabuanyako, says the facility would, among other things, help carry out a range of specialist eye care services for rural dwellers in its catchment area. Anas Abid has more.
Equipped with modern facilities to provide complete eye care to patients, the new Holy Family Eye Clinic would help curb the numerous eye problems facing residents of Techiman and the entire Bono East Enclave. The new structure, according to the Bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Techiman, Most Reverend Dominic Yabuanyako, would, amongst other things, provide advanced diagnostics and eye care treatment to the people of the region, particularly those in the rural settings.
The burden of eye-related conditions among the people can only be mitigated with the availability and accessibility of eye care services to the population. Thus, the provision of eye care services is essential in addressing especially the preventable blindness amongst our people. Providentially, the diocese and the hospital, in close cooperation with German Rotary volunteers doctors, designed this project to improve the hospital's capacity to address the eye disease burden.
GRVD President Dr. Jobs Isbari lauded the construction team for the roles they played in the establishment of the new clinic and was quick to add that the GRVD team would continue to lend its support to the Holy Family Hospital, which is the leading health service provider in the Bono East Enclave.
We, Chris Akan-Bobnab and the German Rotary Volunteer Doctors, GRVD, 2017 sat down to think about the possibilities of expanding the eye clinic at the Holy Family Hospital. Now, 6 years later, we are faced with a very successful result, as we have already heard from previous speakers. An eye clinic with excellent equipment and expertise. In the first step, a global grant from Rotary International had to be initiated in order to have a project roadmap and also a financial framework.
Director of the National Catholic Health Service, George Ajay, charged the Holy Family Hospital to work towards expanding its services as well as ensure the sustainability of the new edifice.
Sustainability, Nana Chairman, does not just come with a building. There's still work to be done to plan and implement strategies that will make the services available whenever patients require it. Having the appropriate manpower, equipment, and the right attitude of staff to deliver care, among others.
Executive Director of the Christian Health Association of Ghana, CHAG, Dr. Peter Yeboah, on his part, encouraged the facility to intensify its community outreach programs as a means of making the new eye clinic relevant.
Many people are not aware of their condition. There is a need for us to intensify health education to screen and detect uncorrected errors in their eye system. There are several children who do not even know or who are suffering silently. Cataract surgery can restore vision. We need to pursue prevention, promotive treatment, and rehabilitation to make sure that this edifice becomes relevant.
The new clinic space provides significant improvements over the old location, including larger rooms, improved access, and clearer wayfinding, all designed with the needs of visually impaired patients in mind. Anas Sabit, JoyNews, Techiman.
That's how we cap off the news this morning. But stay with us. The news review is up next. For the news review, we're joined by Executive Director of the Parliamentary Network Africa, Sami Obeng. He is our guest. Just so you know, the news review on the AM show is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Now, what are we offering you? Free prostate screening, free female fertility screening as well. You can locate us in Accra Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi in Kronumabwehia, behind the Angel Educational Complex in Takrade, Anaji Estates in Tema Community 22, in Techiman Hansua, and in Esiama in Zema. You can also reach us on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. On that note, we get to Sami Obeng, Executive Director, Parliamentary Network Africa. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Ben.
Good to have you join the conversation. I want us to start from this interesting point. Listening to the BBC coming to work this morning, you wouldn't believe what I stumbled upon. Of course, very negative about Ghana. It has to do with, I'm sure you've heard of that story about a lady and her sugar daddy, so to speak, one Nemako. Have you followed that story?
Yes.
So that was what they were discussing, and Lydia Forson, and I don't know whether the other person was Yvonne Nelson or something, but they were, reflecting upon it, sugar daddyism, the harsh economic situation that sometimes forces young women or girls to get into some of these relationships. We know for a fact, for example, that in certain parts of the country, there are teens who sometimes end up, because they don't have food, no access to education, nothing, they end up being exploited by some of these much older predators. It left a sour taste in my mouth because we know that is part of our reality. But what is your reflection on that, and what can be done to sanitize our system, even before we get into the papers?
Well, I mean, on the bit about the drivers, the kinds of things that move people into situations where certainly they must find avenues for support, to be able to ensure that their livelihoods are going on. Certainly, it's a big issue, and it's not only about the young girls. It's about young boys who are given to forced slavery. It's about by forced marriages. It's about all of these things, and it is really, really worrying. Something that needs to be checked. But poverty and inequality is a contributing factor to
We seem momentarily to have lost Sami Obeng. I'll just try to buy some time, let him come back and conclude his thoughts on that. But definitely poverty, inequality, like he was mentioning, factors in this entire situation we find ourselves. And I don't want to go to some of what I saw, purportedly encounters or exchanges on WhatsApp with the two. I mean, sometimes we talk about these matters, yes, they come into the open, but still we must find a way of respecting the privacy of some of these other parties. If this hadn't come up, the lawsuit, we probably wouldn't be going into that issue. But what are the broader realities when it comes to this and its pervasiveness in our system? Those are the things we ought to be looking at. And how much does poverty, how much does inequality feed into the situation? If there's love in there and two people, like we would often see in the West, lady 20-something-year-old. I think it's same with the Titanic actor. I just forget his name, so popular yet I've forgotten. Leonardo DiCaprio and his wife, the age gap, some of them 3 decades, 4 decades and more. If the love is there, like we saw with Celine Dion and her husband as well, fine. But if it's just something else because these young girls can get access, a car, maybe a good place for accommodation, a stipend and other perks, then it becomes problematic. You were making a point, Sami Obeng.
Yes, I think I lost my connection momentarily. So poverty, inequality, you know, some of these things are real drivers for pushing people into all manner of things that they would ordinarily not want to do. I think that, you know, just as has been said on various platforms, we need to be running a country that is gradually moving towards a point where, you know, people know that when I complete school, I can get a decent job. If I learn a trade, I can be able to be, you know, okay with the kind of thing that I'll be able to do with it, so that people can move towards the level of, you know, thinking around self-sustainability and how they can be able to help themselves. These things, these drivers, inequality, very, very huge. And sometimes when we discuss some of these topics, we discuss them without going to these root sources of inequality and poverty. And of course, those are big topics that certainly your news review segment will not be meet for discussing all of those big topics, especially for somebody coming from civil society. These are topics we are really, really passionate about. So those are the angles that I just want to bring to this particular discussion this morning.
Right, let's get into the papers now. And the Daily Graphic, the first story that will hit you there, Christian Achu among earthquake victims in Turkey, which is what Turkey now for a while has decided to be called, Turkey. That story is on page 13, and there's been a lot of he's been rescued, he's not been rescued. We heard from very prominent news portals that he had been taken out of the rubble with a leg injury. Then there was supposedly another bit saying that a co-player of his in his team said some had been brought out, but not Achu. We'll find out what the take of the Daily Graphic is. But it also says, illegal miners block Birim River, destroy hectares of farmland. New property rate rollout. GRA MMDAs target 1.77 billion Ghana cedis. I just had to make this point this morning, even as I gear up to get into some of these stories. The taxes on some products in our country and the entire system, customs and all of that. Today I'll end up with customs because of something I got, okay? It comes, and I'm not going to mention the outfit that brought it into the country, but the customs charges, tax component, everything on it is about half the value of that little item. And I'm asking myself, what the heck is going on? I mean, and today, after the show, I'll be going to that outfit. I just don't want to mention names for the respect of certain brands. But how? What are we doing? And these taxes and everything that is going in, what do we even see them being done? I mean, what do we see being done with them? I get exasperated sometimes. If there were an issue right now, right here on my block, and we needed the fire service, maybe through no fault of theirs, logistical, human resource and all of that, it would probably take quite a while. If you ever called the police at midnight asking for assistance, you probably might hear, we need this and we need that. I mean, it's getting infuriating. Yet we are charged so bloody much in this country. Everywhere. Makes no sense to me. And if the leaders are listening, that's why you have to fix the country. DDEP ends today. Debt exchange will bring economic stability, that's according to Oforiatta, and provide opportunities for growing population, former President Obasanjo to African leaders. Let's start with the story about Christian Achu. I'll ignore the one about the GRA for now and get into the story about Christian Achu. I'll get into the GRA story later. So the Ghana and the football fraternity worldwide are waiting anxiously to hear news about Christian Achu as rescuers in Turkey continue their careful search to rescue hundreds of people trapped in the rubble following a powerful earthquake that hit the country and Syria at dawn yesterday. The earthquake, measuring 7.8 on the Richter scale, has so far claimed 2,300 lives, with hundreds, including Ghanaian international football star Achu, still missing, with efforts being made to rescue them. The 31-year-old Ghana international, who currently plays his football with Turkish Super League side Hatayspor, was said to be missing after some of his teammates and members of the club's technical staff were reportedly pulled from the rubble in the rescue mission in Antalya, where the club is based. Achu came off the bench and scored deep into stoppage time last Sunday to secure a 1-0 win over Kasimpasa in their home game. Imagine that, Samuel Bing, you come off the bench, net a goal. I'm sure he must have been elated, and next thing you know, this happens and you are under rubble. I've been thinking, I actually prayed for Achu yesterday because at 31, I mean, forget whether that's his real age or football age. At 31, I have seen very young people sometimes go through some traumatic incidents, and I don't even want to think that would happen. Our hearts and minds are with him. Any thoughts on that before we move on?
Very, very, very nervy moments they were yesterday. We still are nervy as a people. I mean, if you follow social media, you clearly will see how Ghanaians, were very, very worried. It was not surprising then that we had to have, various Ghanaian leaders, people from all walks of life, expressing our wishes, praying for our children, what have you. I mean, young man plays, one day, the next day, under rubble. We are all nervy about whether he's around or not, especially for somebody also who plays a football career, where he needs all of his limbs intact, and so to be found under rubble and the consequences that could come with it are really, really dire. I think that we all really, really have a responsibility to pray for our brother. We are hoping that the Almighty God himself would bring him out unscathed, so that he would be able to continue with his trade, because this promising career, cannot be cut short, because of a situation like this. But not only him, we are praying for the people of Turkey and Syria, even in these very, very difficult moments.
And indeed, that is the situation. I just love the passion whenever he's played for the Black Stars, the passion. Some of these people, you see them and you see they are committed to the cause. There was that infamous incident in 2015 about the money being flown and all of that. But you look at some of these players and the way they're passionate about what they do, you cannot but love them. And it's really sad that this has happened, but we're still with him in prayer, and we pray for the very best for him. But then new property rate rollout, GRA MMDA's target 1.77 billion Ghana cedis, and the Ghana Revenue Authority, in collaboration with the Ministry of Local Government, Decentralization and Rural Development and the Lands Commission, has collected data required to bill all property in the country. The list and details of more than 8.87 million properties codified into the Unified Common Property Rate Platform, also known as myassembly.gov.gh, to enable property owners to verify their rates and pay same come with their valuations, owners, and other details. However, 76 metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies have provided the rates or levies for the various properties, that is, imposts, which will form the basis for the first phase of the end-to-end district revenue collection and administration platform, designed to enhance the collection of and accounting for property rates. So, Reverend Dr. Usuamu has said the new arrangement would not allow the use of cash, and that ratepayers were required to pay via mobile money or electronic cards. Like I was sharing earlier, Sammy, I'm getting tired of hearing of tax initiatives when there is no commensurable, visible impact of our taxes. As a young person, I go out there and see how young people react. Young people who cannot afford one square meal, one proper meal a day. Young people who, we have the story out there about one Leonard. I think he was at the St. Francis Xavier Seminary. I took time to watch the video yesterday. I nearly wept. Brilliant guy, talking even about the inadequacies of our pi calculation, and you can tell he is exceedingly brilliant. He suffers bipolar disorder, and I pray and hope, even as I use this platform, that some people who are listening to me, if you've not seen the video, if you can assist Leonard, it would be fantastic. You can see the squalor, the poverty in which he's grown, and then when his father passed, a teacher, it became even worse. We have all of these characters in here. Who knows the sort of great scientist Leonard could have become, and maybe still could become. Yet look at his circumstances. And we are here always collecting taxes kicking the Ghanaian left, right, center. I'm not saying it's wrong to collect taxes or pay taxes. In other jurisdictions, we pay them and see the benefits. Here, you pay them and you still have the worst roads anywhere. Sammy, over to you. You would have to unmute, Sammy Obeng. I think you've muted yourself.
These things are really stressful, you know, and you are not alone in expressing such frustration about some of these taxations that get taken and then, you know, things are not as good. I was expressing to some of my colleagues a few days back about how I watch my pay slip month after month, you know, look at how much goes in by way of PAYE, look at the roads that leads to my workplace from my home, look at how much traffic I'll have to endure on my stretch just because that particular road has been on the radar for many, many years and nobody is actually attending to it. Look at the bits and pieces of potholes on that particular road that even, you know, affects the traffic situation and all of that. And then you feel very much discouraged. However, we have a responsibility as a people to continue to pay taxes, but we also have a responsibility or a duty to call duty bearers, you know, to do better with the resources that we provide for them. And that is the reason why when they mess up our economies, that is the reason why when they mismanage our resources, that is the reason why when they fail in their endeavor to protect the public purse that has been entrusted to them, we must call them out. And it must not be seen as disrespect or must not be seen as being anti-government, because people are going through a lot to be able to provide these things. On a bit about property rates, long overdue. Successive periods have not seen to ensuring that these monies are collected efficiently. Hopefully, this process will see to some efficiency. But what's the level of education that people are being given on this, on the payments, on the valuation, on who is supposed to be doing the payments and what have you? And then, like you rightly put it, what will we be seeing beyond payment of these property rates as the development that we get to see in our communities, you know, because we pay some of these rates? Will they be going back into funding luxurious living of other people while other people, you know, wobble in poverty? That should not be the case at all.
Have you taken a good look recently? Maybe you ate somewhere, purchased something. Do you look at the tax and levy component?
Huge. You know, I mean,
it's mind-boggling.
Huge.
And I ask myself, I'm paying all of this, and this is the words that are coming to me this morning. I cannot use on air, but this is what I get as a citizen of this land.
You know, very, very sad. And you see, whenever we speak about these matters, we are pointed to the fact that the other countries where we, you know, love to cite as examples have their people paying huge taxes. That's very much true. But they also have their people benefiting from a society that is using their taxes well, a society that cares for them, a society that you are rest assured that because you are a tax-paying citizen or your parents pay taxes or you are contributing to the development of the community, when something goes wrong with you, society would actually come to your aid through, you know, systems that have been put in place. And that is why we must be continuing calling people out when they decide to mess up with our economies.
Let's look at illegal miners blocking the Birim River. And illegal miners have restricted the free flow of the Birim River on the outskirts of Achim Abuabo to enable them carry out their outlawed activities. Imagine that. During a tour of the spot between Achim Wenchi in the Denchambua district and Odan, where the river course has been diverted and narrowed last Friday, it was clear that large tracts of land along the river had been destroyed by the illegal miners who were carrying out their activities, also known as galamsey, with impunity. The Daily Graphic team found that many cocoa and oil palm farms had been destroyed without giving any compensation to their owners. Although the team did not meet anyone on site, it saw some excavators, which according to a source had been abandoned while security personnel had demobilized others. When the Daily Graphic contacted the Odan Divisional Police Commander, Assistant Commissioner of Police, Reverend Samuel Nyameche Adani Ameyao, he confirmed the invasion of the area by illegal miners. You know what? I don't have anything to say about this, Sammy. Nothing surprises me anymore. And I have honestly come to the point where I see that any talk on Galamsey from this administration, from the president to everybody else, to the Lands and Natural Resources Minister, Abu Jinapo, is mere talk. Because after 6 years, what I've seen is a clear deterioration. Nothing to write home about. Over to you.
The impunity with which some of these things are done leaves you with no reason but to think that, there is more to this than meets the eye. We're in a country where your water producing company tells you that, look, we are getting to the brink of having water issues, a very huge national security situation. You are in a country where agriculture is being affected. You are in a country where we are seeing signs of the effect of all of these very, very terrible things, and all we get is continuous lip service. All we get is people continuing to do these things with impunity, and you wonder whether our system is able to deal with grievous issues when they come about. Because look, if for some of these issues, which in my opinion we should be able to deal with them head on, because it does not take technology coming from the United States of America, or wherever, to deal with them, and we are unable to deal with them. I wonder what kind of things that we can legitimately, what kind of nation-wrecking issues that we can legitimately deal with when these things get to us. Rightly noted, these Galamsey matters, sometimes you wonder really, like the guys will say, whether Onupa Yesha, I mean,
penny of you and penny nifi.
It's
Well, we'll do our bit and leave the rest to God. Domestic debt exchange program ends today. Debt exchange will bring economic stability. That's according to Oforieta. Maybe some quick thoughts on the DDEP, and then we can say goodbye to the Daily Graphic newspaper. But maybe before you come through with your response, let me just add. On the back page, fire destroys makeshift homes, shops at Ashaiman, and Yendi Municipal Hospital gets trauma center. Yes, your take, Sammy, on the DDEP.
Well, I mean, I think that it is one of the issues that had been spoken about over and over. I really do not think that, especially on a channel like yours, where all the experts, where all the coalitions that are built up have come to speak about the subject matter. I really think that, in all of this, if there is one lesson that we must all learn, is that our people deserve better. And the terrible things we do along the way, comes back to haunt us. And so as citizens, as government, as leaders, as elected representatives, we must be minded when the experts continuously speak to us about how things are going, what is not going right. And we must not allow politics all the time to hold sway when really common sense and, the interest of the people must be the things holding sway. And I really wish that our country will get out quickly, from this messy situation we find ourselves in. Government tells us that if something is not done urgently, I read in the news, within this quarter, things will come crashing on us. I hope we never get there, because if it crashes on all of us as a people. But I just, hope and pray that we do not find ourselves in such situation where merely because people fail to listen brings everybody, to a situation and stuff. I mean, it's not proper.
I'll be going a bit quickly so that in the next 5 to 6 minutes we can wrap with the papers that we have. The Daily Guide says, rebel, quote, NDC MP's rubbish mosquito meeting, but we know that the NDC has found its smoothness level, or its own level, after some meetings. I saw a post by Muntaka on meeting the former president and all of that. And as of now, it would appear that the cracks and crevices have been patched up. But will that be enough? No malice in beige license revocation. That's according to a witness. 5 injured in military Bibiani youth clash. I'm sure you followed that. Lawyer ditches coup plotter, and Christian Achu missing in Turkey earthquake. But the latest we have, actually, you can check out the story on myjoyonline.com. Turkish media confirm he's been found, and reports from Turkey reveal Hatayspor and former Black Stars winger Christian Achu has been pulled from the wreckage after an earthquake hit the Western Asian country. Now, there's a post by one Yagi's Sabun Çoglu. Pardon my murdering his name. I don't speak Turkish. And the translation of what he writes is, Christian Achu has been pulled from the wreckage alive. And the club's sporting director is reportedly still unaccounted for. It was the two of them, and now apparently he has been found. My hope, sincerely, is that indeed everything is well, and we can take it from there. Quick reactions, though, on the Bibiani and the Bibiani issue with the youth and the military clashing. Any quick thoughts?
Well, yet again, we come to a point where we're having one too many of these instances of clashes between, youth groups and security officials. I think on this platform a couple months ago we discussed a few other instances, that had come up, and it is becoming worrying. I think that when you have one too many of such examples, really, the security services, traditional authorities, leaders, we must be teaming up to find ways to, educate each other on how to deal with some of these things without, such injuries, sometimes leading to deaths, which are needless and could have been avoided.
Let's look at graphic business now. DDEP program, banks' profitability to suffer again. Deal or no deal? $3 billion IMF conundrum. And Ghana's energy security threat. Is gold for oil the solution? Let's get into the stories, starting with the DDE program and banks' profitability to suffer. So, players in the financial service sector have said the profitability of banks who sign on to the government's DDEP will severely contract this year. According to them, the impact of the introduction of mark-to-market or market-to-market, a prelude to the DDEP, had already dealt severe damage or done severe damage to their books. So they fear a worsened situation this year once banks sign on to the program. There also is deal or no deal, a $3 billion IMF conundrum. And graphic business, since you're tied to the graphic group, I don't see why you're spelling conundrum with 3 N's. So C-O-N-N instead of C-O-N-U-N-D-R-U-M. But the story says, government is inching closer to securing a $3 billion budgetary support from the IMF following a breakthrough in negotiations with major key stakeholders affected by government's DDEP. And you put major and key together, so which one? The immediate question for many economic watchers is that it does not look like there will be a deal soon, as was expected. Pardon my being naughty this morning. I get like this sometimes when I read the papers and see things that I hope not to see. And Ghana's energy security threat. Is gold for oil the solution? Any quick thoughts on these three? So the first two tied together, going back to the DDEP, and then gold for oil. Any thoughts on what you've seen so far? The last we heard, we had got the oil from Russia, and we were saying now that we expended about $40 million, $41 million, thereabouts, to get the shipment and not gold. Quick reflections?
Well, quick ones on these, because I really wanted to say a bit about the NDC minority bits. Obviously, I'm certainly not going to leave the set without talking about that. Although now I am also minded about whether my English will be corrected. Having said that, though, I need to. I think that's on the debt exchange bit. For me, one of the biggest challenges or the biggest groups that I'm expecting to be affected hugely are banks, those in the financial sector and what have you. I have an example. There's this gentleman who's been discussing with me the need to join their insurance package, for a couple of months now. And now I don't feel encouraged to even have that discussion with him because, look, see what's happening with our financial sector. All of these things started with Ponzi schemes, and then it went to bank closures, and then we are having this situation and all of that. So that a very fantastic financial market that we have built, banks, investments, call for people to be able to put monies aside and save and all of that are just coming down crumbling, and people are not going to be interested in these matters anymore. And I link this to the gold for oil, situation that, we've had, experts, people in civil society, people in academia and all of that making suggestions and contributions on how some of these things, the transparency of it, but even ways through which some of these things can be done better. If there is anything to learn from all that we are going through as a country, it is to the effect that when these things are being done, please listen to the people that you lead and serve so that we can all curate, co-create, the kinds of solutions that we need, so that it will not be the kinds of solutions that will come crashing at us.
The final newspaper, let's avoid further strain on the economy. Oforiatta rallies all bondholders to join the DDEP. Mr. Finance Minister, let's avoid further strain on the economy. Well, when we were borrowing, did we know how we were straining our economy? I mean, I'm becoming inured to this entire situation. When you call people to tighten their belts, how much have you tightened your belt? Anyway, President Akufo-Addo approves NHIA free elderly care policy in Serewa to support 2,500 rice, soya, and rice farmers. And Dr. J.B. Dankwa's legacy on constitutional growth and development continues. That's the story there. But let's wrap. The Daily Statesman says, Shraj exonerates Deputy Gender Minister. Kwabena Japan calls for battle of ideas, not insults. Ghana is global trade hub. U.S. explores rebound deal with POD. And Economy Times, government misses fiscal deficit target. And the government has missed its fiscal deficit target of 6.7% of GDP as at the end of November 2022. Banks make losses in 2022, and IMF bailout to be ready before end of first quarter. Any quick reflections as we wrap?
Yeah, just a quick one. Maybe let me just touch. You mentioned the rice bit, a matter that I am actually very interested in. Last week, I was part of the National Rice Fair that happened in Wale Wale, and I'm particularly interested because of the potential that the rice economy, sector, the value chain holds for the economy, for some of these challenges that we are going through with our foreign exchange, because we send so much money out of the country to import rice, to employment, to women who are in the agriculture sector and what have you. And so I really think that, this whole rice conversation should be given a lot more prominence in our media discussions within the agricultural sector. I've not read the full details of the reasoning that Shraj gave for exonerating the deputy minister, so I may not want to comment on that immediately. But like I said from the very beginning, I think that on the NDC matter, the minority, matter, if I may touch quickly on that particular one, it is quite interesting that they've been able to in-house, patch things up. I mean, you use the word patch up, and I think it's the right word. That's right terminology you used for that, because as to whether it is just a patch up or it's it's been sown, it lives to be seen. But I think that parties in parliament, especially for a parliament that has such tight numbers, must be minded about the fact that every little error, the kinds of things they do, can come back to haunt them. And so they must be more, we must move away from, ways that things have been done over the years, and we feel that that is the way to go because it's been done over the years. Society is dynamic, things are moving, parliament is different. And as parliament resumes today, I wish the members of parliament the very best. I hope that they are coming for the second half of their tenure with the people of Ghana in mind. I must say that members of parliament have over the years contributed to this kind of situation we have with our economy, because sometimes the kinds of approvals they make, the kinds of due diligence they do for the loans that they allow government to take. This time around, I think the lesson here is that we all must play our role so that we don't end up in a ditch like we have found ourselves now.
Thank you so much, Samuel Bing, for joining us this morning for breakfast this review, and we wish you the best of the day. He is Executive Director, Parliamentary Network Africa. And that's how we cap off the news review. Stay with us because up next we tell you the latest in sports. Do stay.
Hello, welcome to the sports segment with me, Razak Musbao. And breaking news coming from Turkey says Attire Sport and former Black Stars winger Christian Achu has been pulled from the wreckage after an earthquake hit the Western Asian country. The 31-year-old and the club's sporting director, Tanat Savut, were trapped under the rubble for more than 24 hours since Monday morning's earthquake, which has so far claimed the lives of more than 4,300 people, while 15,000 others sustained injuries. Well, the club vice president, Muzat Ozat, has confirmed this story, and it's in a tweet from my colleague, Fento Tahiru Fento, and you can see on your screens there, Fento just speaking to that, and you could see Muzat making the point that I just had another meeting. Christian Achu was taken to hospital with injuries, and this coming in the last 30 to 40 minutes. This coming from the manager of Hatay Sport, confirming this story, and likewise journalists across Turkey also confirming this. And at the moment, you can see even on the trends, Christian Achu is trending, and this story is gathering momentum as the time goes. This is great news for the Ghanaian who had been trapped in the rubble for over 24 hours now, and news just coming in is that he has been found, taken to the hospital, and despite picking up some injury. And this is also Yagi Sabunklu, and he's been given up to the minute update on the situation. And his last tweet, you could see where he indicated that Christian Achu has been pulled from the wreckage alive, and this was around 6:25 a.m. in the morning as far as Ghana time is concerned. Yagi's he's been given up to the minute update on this very situation. And also another is Ekrem Konu, who is also a Turkish journalist, also given update, and you can see just 45 minutes ago he tweeted this, that ex-Premier League star Christian Achu finally rescued after being buried in rubble of Turkey earthquake. Achu, who is plying his trade in Turkey with Attire Sport, is currently recovering in a local hospital. And that's the update in the last 1 hour or so, that Christian Achu has been found. He is safe and has been taken to the hospital. We'll keep tabs on this very story and get to our contact in Turkey and bring you up to speed on his situation there. But this is really, really good news coming in, because it's been all over as far as him being trapped in the rubble is concerned. But just away from that, to the Ghana Premier League, and Kumasi Asante Kotoko recorded an impressive result as they ramped to a 4-0 win over Accra Lions at the Barra Sports Stadium last night. The win moves them within 4 points of leaders, Ediona Stars. So that's the first goal scored by Rashid Norte there, the newly signed midfielder for Kumasi Asante Kotoko. Very, very beautiful, well-worked goal from the wings, and it's a beautiful interplay by Kumasi Asante Kotoko over there, and Rashid Norte running into the penalty area to connect to it, leaving Accra Lions defenders pretty much, in great blind spot. You could see Agadas over there, Mukwala finding Agadas, and Rashid Norte connecting to give Kumasi Asante Kotoko the lead there. In that very same game, Ugandan striker Steve Mukwala scored twice in that game to take his tally to 7 goals so far in the season. And that's the first goal. Beautiful true pass to find Stephen Mukwala, and an excellent finish from the Ugandan striker, and a well-placed pass by Mohamed Sharif to find Stephen Mukwala. And you can see Accra Lions goalkeeper could do absolutely nothing about it, and the fans celebrating there. And this was the third goal, and you can see Enoch Morrison trying to cut in, beautiful dribble there, and crosses it in, and it finds none other but Stephen Mukwala. You can see, what he didn't end up in the first attempt, but on the second attempt, it was Stephen Mukwala who beat all the defenders to connect to it, and he does his iconic celebration there to give Kumasi Asante Kotoko a 3-goal lead there. The fourth goal was scored by Richard Morrison there, and that's going to come shortly. And you can see Kotoko fans clearly celebrating, and they're coming back after failing to pick points against Kareli United at the Camp Park. This is their second win in 3 games after that thumping win over Kotoku Royals. It was 5-0, and this was a beautiful strike from Enoch Morrison to give Kumasi Asante Kotoko the 4th goal. And the Accra Lions, who prior to this were performing very well in the league, clearly had a very, very difficult day at the Barbara Sports Stadium. That's how Kumasi Asante Kotoko won that game. 4-0 it ended. That's 9 goals scored at the Barbara Sports Stadium in the last 2 games for Kumasi Asante Kotoko. Now let's check out the standings of the Ghana Premier League after that win for Kumasi Asante Kotoko, because they go to second, and the Diona Stars lead the pack there with 31 points. Kumasi Asante Kotoko in second place with 27 points, and BBN Gold Stars, who are performing very well, 26 points in third place. The Accra Lions themselves weren't doing bad until yesterday, 4th place, and Bechem United in 5th place, 25 points. Accra Hearts of Folk, after losing to Real Tamale United, are left at 6th place with 25 points, and 7th place is Real Tamale United, 24. And you can see Kotoku Royals are languishing in the 18th position, Tamale City in the 17th, and Confisal struggling again in the second half of the season there. Legon Cities are catching up, likewise in Sonchaman are also catching up. Dreams FC are catching up, and Dreams FC will play Kumasi Asante Kotoko next in the weekend's fixture. Summertex, Kareli United, Confisal, and Tamale City, of course, Kotoku Royals, all lying there in the bottom 3 over there. Well, there's more on that Christian Achiu's story on myjoyonline.com, and also follow us on all our social media pages, because we're going to keep you posted on that very one. That's all we have for you on AM Sports. It's me, Razak Musbah.
Back on the AM show, and we kickstart our big stories with a focus on the National Democratic Congress. There appears to be calm in the camp of the opposition NDC following an intervention by former President John Dramani Mahama and the Council of Elders of the National Democratic Congress. A meeting was held yesterday to resolve the impasse that ensued after party leadership reshuffled its parliamentary leadership. Today, we discuss this and how the party will turn the current issues around. Joining us, Kofi Adams is Member of Parliament for Buem. We also have Kina Likimani, Programs Manager at Odikro. And of course, joining the conversation, CDD Fellow Dr. John Osai Kwapong. Well, let's start with Kina Likimani, who joins us via phone. Kina, it's been a while since we interacted, and I honestly miss having you on the show. I hope you're well. Hello, Kina.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
My predominant internet provider is Surfline. I don't know whether they've gone belly up. They've been off for 4 weeks, and the NCA is watching on quietly while they mistreat customers. I have to figure out another provider. Yeah.
I've heard about a few challenges. Yes, and it's really refreshing having you back on the show. But I've heard of a few concerns with some of these providers, just to stay away from brand names. So I get exactly where you're coming from. But let's backtrack a bit. When it comes to this NDC melee that now seems to have had the creases smoothened, what do you make of that entire situation where midstream, the 8th Parliament, there is a change in guard with Haruna Idrisu Muntaka and his crew being set aside, well, not all of them, because some were retained, for a new crop of leaders with the thinking behind it. Oh, we need people who are savvy when it comes to the economy, when it comes to infrastructure and all of that, when it comes to energy. What is your take on that?
Well, first of all, I'm not, I think people have been making a lot out of it as though it's something that shouldn't be happening midstream. It's a party changing their leadership. And parties do this all the time, and there's huge disagreements. I think the NDC itself, not I think, there were some years, maybe even a decade ago where, Dr. Obeda Samoa, the NDC has, it's not a big deal. First of all, let's say it's not a big deal. As a parliamentary watcher, and when I view Parliament, the lens I use is any move that happens, is it going to lead to better representation? Are Ghanaians going to get out of Parliament what we want, what we need as per the Constitution and more? I'm hoping any move like this, I hope it works out in the best interest of Ghanaians. Of course, I don't, you snuck in a comment about we need better, they're using sector issues like the economy, energy. These things are important. But also, so are the non-so-called sectors that never get attention. Health, standard of living, youth development and youth employment, education, the safety of children. If one of the arguments being made is that we need more leadership on NDC wants to project better leadership on economy, that worries me a bit, because one of the things that Parliament, one of the main things Parliament does predominantly is to, back the executive, especially if the party in power and the executive, if the majority and the executive belong to the same party. It's, there's a lot of business that comes in Parliament that is solely about finance. And of course, as we are in an economic crisis, this is very, very important. But so are all the other issues that, we need to address about, the freedom of Ghanaians. Like, anyway, let me not go off on that time. So the thing that I look at is this going to improve the representation and the transparency and accountability from Parliament? And we'll just have to wait and see. Time and time again, there are the signals, Parliament is going to do this, is going to shift here, is going to do whatever, and we don't get what we need out of Parliament. This has been the story for of the Fourth Republic, particularly after the tenure of Honorable Peter Lajisi. So the late Honorable Peter Lajisi. So that's how I pass it. If there's a change in NDC leadership, good for them, I guess. But is it going to be good for us? This is what we need. As for party movements, that happens. It's not alarming at all.
But from a consultative standpoint, well, it was said why there were problems apparently with this decision was that not enough consultation had been done. So there had been concerns about that. But when you
mean not enough consultations within their party?
Within the party, yes, within the party.
No, you see, you are asking me to again. I do not. For me, and I'm being called to this as a parliamentary watcher. Yeah, of course we want consultations, but the main thing is that is any move that any of the party makes to their leadership to how they conduct business in Parliament is it going to improve? That is the main thing. We spend a lot of time talking about party, the movement within parties, what is going to happen to parties, and it is important. It's very important because we are a multi-party democracy as per our constitution. But time and time again, it seems like we give a lot of air to the parties. They do not, even they will go out of a limb and say, oh, you know, we are improving party democracy. We are doing this within the party. And still, there's quite a lot of corruption. There's quite a lot of, particularly in parliament, there's quite a lot of following the party line as opposed to representing Ghanaians. So I do want to emphasize that, like, party consultations, democracy within parties are important. But all of this ultimately must lead, particularly in parliament, to better representation of Ghanaians. If all of this does not lead to better representation of Ghanaians, having our issues led, parliament is where they are supposed to be on our side. If all of this does not lead to a parliament that is on our side, every single parliament, then, you know, it's basically talk for Ghanaians. That's how I think. We have to get we have to get to a point where we get the results, the benefits from parliament, from these movements. So I'm sitting here just watching and seeing. Of course, I have no, so I'm just watching. Is that the thing about the minority, all minorities, I think, when they are in parliament, they are very fond of walking out. An issue is not going their way because obviously they are not the majority, so they are going to walk out. We do not send people to parliament to walk out. You speak on the floor and make your objections known. You vote the objection. So even this is a very minor point too, but my issue is, you know, we have to look at all of this. Is this going to like benefit Ghanaians? Otherwise, it's movement on a chessboard. The outcome of which is not going to help us any.
Right.
So we need to get to a place where what happens on Parliament benefits Ghanaians, because that's why Parliament is there.
Do hold for me. Let me bring in BWIM Member of Parliament, Kofi Adams, as well, who joins the conversation. Mr. Adams, a very good morning to you, sir. Hello, Kofi. Well, we'll try to work the connection to find out whether he can hear me. Mr. Adams, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
That baritone, unmistakably Kofi Adams. We've seen the background to all of this, how things may not have gone exactly as some people would have had it. The leadership of the party pointing to a new leadership in Parliament and the resultant cracks and crevices that have become manifest. When you look at that resolution from yesterday, the engagement with the former president, and the party's engagement, basically, what would you say? What would you make of it? I mean, but for the intervention of the former president, who knows how things could have ended up? I read about Honorable Muntaka and what he put on his social media concerning meeting the former president. But for you, what for now are the takeaways from how things have culminated after all these engagements?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. But even before I answer your question directly, let me extend my greetings to the program manager for Odikru. They have been doing their best to also bring Parliament closer to the people they represent through their various tools they use to assess. However, I disagree with her on two things she raised. One, on being on the side of the party in Parliament and also walk out. If the Constitution was so minded that MPs should be on their own when they get elected on a party ticket, the Constitution would not have made it impossible for a member of Parliament to decide that upon election on a party's ticket, he or she can decide to say he or she no longer identifies with a party and wants to be independent and still stay in Parliament, or want to cross to another party and still stay in Parliament. The Constitution is so careful to know that when you are elected in the name of an organization, a political party in this case, you are supposed to represent also that political party. So there will be times when the party has a strong position on a matter. That is why we have the whip system, where they will whip every member of parliament to toe the party line because the party has a position. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. All democracies, advanced democracies that we sometimes want to reference also, have whip system where they whip their members to fall in line and to make sure that a particular objective, a particular policy is what they push. So there's nothing wrong with that. Two, walkouts are also tools, democratic tools. Boycotts are democratic tools. Even the national elections can be boycotted. You can boycott an election in its totality. And you don't just walk out. You walk out after stating your position, that you disagree with this. It is only when sometimes it's getting to the time to decide on the vote that one side will say that we do not want to be a party to this process, and therefore we are working now. At that point, they have made their case. And when you check the answers, you will have the record of the position of the side that is working out. So I equally do not see a problem with walkout. We don't just walk out without stating our position. We would have stated our position. So I disagree with her on these 2 points of the party's strength on its members of parliament and the issues of what? Walkout.
Okay.
That being the case, it doesn't mean that members of parliament do not also have independence to represent their people. We have motions, we have bills that individuals have sponsored, we have questions that individuals ask, we have statements individuals make. We have so many angles that where even sometimes we disagree within our side. So there is a certain level of independence. And we must not be treated as if we are zombies who are just there to be whipped on every line. When comments are passed by credible groups such as that, it creates a certain problem. So that point having been made, let me now move to
if you do not mind, I'd just like to let Kina come in for some 30 seconds. It'll be interesting to find out what her response is to that particular point, so that when we move forward, we'll not come back to this point. Is that okay with you, Mr.
That's fine. That's fine.
Kina, so when he spoke about boycotting elections and the validity of such actions, it took me back to 1992 and the fact that the parliamentary elections were actually boycotted by the MPP. How do you respond to that in some 30 seconds, if you may?
That can be deployed, when people want to express dissent and all that. But my point is that this is what I would like to say. People come into parliament on a party ticket voted in by the citizens. So you are accountable, you belong to a party and you also are representing Ghanaians. Somewhere in between those two, you have two masters. And ultimately, the master is the Ghanaian. My point is that, let me give you an example. Like things like, say you have a bill that is about using agricultural lands for mining. And maybe the ideas being put forward, I will keep the Ghanaian farmer. But ultimately, if we pass the bill, it will help all Ghanaians. But people who live in the city have no stake in what is happening. There should be a way for people, for representation of parliament to identify that the MPs, all of them, most of them who come from rural areas, feel this way, as opposed to they can cross party lines. Of course, people will always be party members. We know that. My point is that till date, it seems that the representation on the floor of Ghanaians on the floor of parliament has not, over time, inured to the benefit of the people that are the people who voted, the people who have created this space for our democracy, the citizens of Ghana. And it is a worry because Parliament is a really powerful institution. it has roles and responsibilities that only Parliament can do in our democracy. There's so many ways to contribute. There's so many ways to represent.
Right.
That sometimes we feel, and I'm not saying this because I'm a Bikram Kina, Ghanaians feel that we are not getting what we want from Parliament. And a lot of times they want to switch off their minds from Parliament, which is not a good thing. So when you come to serve, you are serving your party, you are serving the people of Ghana, you are representing the people of Ghana. We must see that this is being done in our best interest.
Okay.
This was said, of course, sometimes Parliament can go against the people when it is right. When they feel like this is good for us, the people will have to catch up on the issues. We know these things happen.
Okay.
But I don't think that I have gone off the deep end by suggesting that representation on the floor of Parliament has more often than not told a party line over the interests of Ghanaians. Because people have, you see what, I'm a feminist, I'm a Pan-African feminist, and I'm a Ghanaian. Somewhere in that, I will always side with Ghana.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? There should be a way, and I know there is a way. People do this in other jurisdictions as well. They stick to their party ideology, they stick to the party line, they find a way of representing Ghanaians. So that in the end, every single cycle of the Parliament, things are being done in our best interest.
Okay.
All the time.
So point,
as much as possible. That is what I'm saying.
Point made in that.
I'm trying to say, if Parliament, sometimes it feels like Parliament is subjugating its role to the executive. And of course, we are very happy to see, certain private members. So I'm not happy to see all of them. Issues are different. But Parliament has power. It must take that power. The power that is given it by the Constitution is so unique and so, it's the only one that can really speak for us.
All right, so I think the point is well made when it comes to the role of Parliament. Let me quickly just welcome aboard Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, CDD Fellow. Doc, thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Great. Just hold for me and let Kofi Adams, Member of Parliament for Buem, make the point he was about to get to before I brought Kina back in. Kofi, back to you, sir.
I would like to have a conversation with Kina later, and I believe that we will get a conversation.
I'm sure you guys would have a lot to talk about.
Yes, there's a lot that we'll talk about, and I will either she invites me over or I invite her over, and we will have to discuss over some of these issues and see how together we can help present the image of Parliament and what it does, and it will help all of us build our democracy. But having
I
said
will
that,
hold you to that, Honorable. Thank you very much.
Let me move now to our issues. I think that we knew we will get to this point. Changes by nature sometimes get resisted, either for good reasons or for bad reasons. Some may use a misstep in the process of the change to kick against the change. Others will just kick against it because they feel it should not happen. So the reaction that came along with the announcement of the changes in leadership, for me, I saw it as something normal. And one or two missteps was taken advantage of to drown the position of those who would not have felt so comfortable with the change home. And it's good that he's drawn the party's attention to a few things that we need to look at and have rules to govern such processes. We do not have clear rules as to how we elect our parliamentary leadership in our party. But we have had a certain process we have used, and therefore, they say convention sometimes.
But you as parties, you have your own constitutions. You can enforce how things ought to be done, right?
No, I'm talking about our party constitution. Our party constitution has not made clear how parliamentary group leadership is elected.
But you've had convention over time.
That's what I'm saying. It is that convention that now is being challenged. So when people challenge, they were challenging as if the authority. They were challenging both the authority and the process. But you could not challenge the authority because there is nothing that says that the party leadership do not have the power to appoint parliamentary leadership. So there really have not been a clear process. And that convention is what has been followed. I think we are growing. We are a growing party, a growing democracy. And it is important that, at least to a large extent, we have a laid out process as to how the levels of consultation, who and who should be consulted in a reshuffle or in an initial appointment. I believe that moving forward, this will be clearly stated. But in terms of the resolution, I knew we will get here. I knew we have elders. I knew we have persons who, when they speak, people will have to listen. And that is what happened. His Excellency, the former President John Dramani Mahama, is a stalwart in the party. He is the only living former president in our party. The Council of Elders equally have a lot of persons who have served this country, some in parliament to the highest position of speaker, like the Right Honorable Speaker Doa Jaho, and others. Alhaji Mama Idrisu and co have been ministers and PNDC secretaries and what have you. So they hold a lot of respect in the party and in the country at large. And so coming together, listening to you and saying, well, you have a case in this area, but you cannot question the authority of the leadership of the party to do ABCD. So let's work together and let's focus on things that affect Ghanaians, that Ghanaians are expecting us as a party to help them out. Even before we win power, there are certain things we can do now. There are certain things we can force government not to do because we feel that it will be so injurious to the people of this country. But if we are not so focused, we get distracted. So we need to get focused to the business of the day, playing our role whilst we work to win power in 2024, so we'll form government in 2025.
Just a quick add-on before I go to Dr. Kwapong. So it is said that those 72 rebel MPs, some of them including the Member of Parliament for Pru, I'm talking about Dr. Kwabena Donko, Pru East, are still insistent that the proper processes have not been followed, and they were casting some aspersions, for lack of a better word, about this entire meeting with the Council of Elders, and now the former president has also stepped in. But what does this do? Does it smoothen those creases when it comes to the party?
Yesterday, luckily, the member for Pru East, Honorable Kwabena Donko, sat directly in front of me. He never resisted or raised an objection to anything that was discussed there. So this information... He
may not have raised an objection, but did he subscribe to it? Do you know whether he was for what was happening?
He clearly was part of those who said, yeah, in Parliament when we say yeah, it means we agree. If you disagree with something, you rise on your feet, you'll be recognized, and then you speak. Indeed, the lead person for the petitioners spoke and said everything has been resolved as far as they are concerned. And that is Dr. Ayene. He did not at that point rose to his feet to say that I disagree, I am against maybe the side within our group that says so. But even the situation
where we all have to strike
72 itself, there have been doubts because I don't think that there were 72 persons who signed up to. But we have crossed that point and we don't need to belabor that point again. What is most important is that the issue have been resolved. Dr. Atufosen's led group has been accepted, and today, when we meet in Parliament, he will take the front seat and will lead our side. Nobody, including those who have been changed, accept the fact that they have been changed. They may have concerns with the process, and they may feel that the process, according to them, could have been neater and done better. That you can't take it from them. But they accept the fact that they are no more in leadership. That is a fact that nobody will challenge.
Do hold for me, Kina and Kofi. Let me bring in Dr. John Osai Kwapong. When you look at how things have panned out in the NDC, we spoke to some of them, and the hope was that they would be able to quickly get over this hurdle, which they appear to have done. But from where you sit, the fact that this has come up so forcefully in the first place, and the fact that obviously there are still some people who feel differently, who may have buried their differences for the collective good, but there's simmering, tension somewhere. What does that do for the party? And was this resolved speedily enough from where you sit?
Yes, I mean, I'm glad it's resolved. I'm glad that it's also been resolved as fast as they could, particularly before Parliament resumed. Yes, these things, even after resolution, you may have some after effects, lingering, feelings here and there. But I think that, at least from everything that I've read, from everything that I've heard, I believe that the collective good, just as you mentioned, is what is before everybody now and is what is at stake. When this issue first came up, I think one of the things that I discussed on this show is that, for me, it was very important that at the end of the day, no matter the disagreements, no matter the upset feelings, etc., there was a bigger picture to be looked at, and that bigger picture was the unity of the party as they gear up for 2024. And my main concern had always been, if this thing is not resolved as quickly as possible, what it does to quote unquote chip at the unity of the party. So I'm glad it's resolved, and I'm sure it would, with time, whatever lingering feelings or residual feelings may be there would all go away, because I'm sure that at the end of the day, all the members of parliament, all the party members know that one thing is very important and overrides any differences that they may have had or any disagreements that they may have had, which is the ultimate victory of the party in the 2024 election. I think it was also very helpful that the Council of Elders walked that fine line between acknowledging that the party leadership, it was within their purview to make these changes to the leadership in parliament, but at the same time also recognizing that the process could have been much better, around things like how it was communicated to the affected parties, etc., and quickly saying, next time, should something like this arise, putting in processes and procedures in place that would ensure that any such decisions would be done in a much improved manner. So I also like the way the Council of Elders, in conjunction with the leadership of the party, have handled this and have, done their very best to smoothen things out with the party caucus in Parliament.
How pivotal do you think was the role of the former president? Reading some of what Mohammed Muntaka, the Member of Parliament for Asawasi, says, to all our supporters within and without, I had a lengthy meeting with my big brother, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, on Saturday evening over the parliamentary reshuffle. I want to first of all thank him for the words of advice and encouragement to me as a younger brother. He goes on to talk about a whole lot more. But how crucial is the role of the former president in all of this? And even as the party gears up to elect a flag bearer, what does it do for his status compared to the other contenders, the likes of Dr. Dufour, the likes of Kojo Bonsu, among others?
I think his role was very crucial and very important. He remains he still remains the leader of the party until presumably in a new primary, either he's retained or a new flag bearer is elected. But
just hold on there. Correct me if I'm wrong. When an election is lost and the party returns to its normal functions, the leadership of the party, I believe it's either the chairman or the general secretary, right, who takes leadership of the party. So in essence, he is not leader of the NDC.
So you're correct. He's not leader of the NDC, but he plays a very critical and important leadership role in the party. As a former president, as someone who led them to the most recent election, and as someone who, although he hasn't said this officially, as someone who I strongly believe will definitely put his hat in the next 2 weeks when the nominations do open. And so knowing that and knowing how crucial party unity would be to him for any chances that he has in, one, winning the flag bearership, and two, returning to the presidency, that it was also incumbent upon him to be able to have these conversations with the affected individuals and resolve any grievances or any issues that they may have. Because as I keep saying, the last thing that I'm sure the former president wants as he tries to stage a comeback is a party that, quote unquote, is is not united, or certain party decisions are beginning to chip at the unity of the party. And so again, I think that his role was very, very important, and I appreciated the fact that he gave audience to the Honorable Muntaka to discuss and talk over whatever issues or concerns that needed to be discussed. And I'm also very happy that when all was said and done, that at least an affected party like Muntaka would come out and make such a statement, because I think the affected parties and how they respond would also be very important in moving forward, right? I mean, they are the aggrieved parties. So if they come out and say, look, we've had lengthy conversations, lengthy discussions with whoever, we accept the decision, we are ready to move on and work for the party, for the unity of the party, let's focus on 2024. I think it helps even improve whatever residual feelings their own supporters may have over the decision that the party took. So I think it was also very commendable that Honorable Muntaka did come out with the statement that he did.
Let me come back to Kinali Kimani. What are your thoughts on the approach of the former president and what his impact has been in this entire process?
Well, I think that, there's a thing about, I like to say there's a thing about Ghanaian former presidents and leaders. When they are called upon to fill these roles, they do it quite well. And I mean, we are well aware of President before doing this, only because I think he was older and all that. But we thank the former president for, I think his role is very pivotal, because also he's most likely to be the flag bearer of the NDC in the coming election. So, I think NDC has done a thing, so more power to them, and they've done well, because such changes are never without rancor. And the thing is that there's sabotage everywhere. Even you can wake up one day to make a plan and you sabotage yourself. The main thing is that they have a vision. I want to go back to Honorable Adams in his last comment. He said, ultimately, I think a lot of people are passing this issue through the lenses of elections. But Honorable Adams said, within the next, just before elections, these next 18 months or however long we have, there is work to do. And there is real opposition to be going on. And I love that, because me, Kina, I am sitting here thinking the elections are very important. They are a key, but very small part of our democratic process. In the crisis that we are in, and to have a president who, even within the economic crisis they have created, has now appointed a minister of pensions who is going to come to Parliament for approval, the ever-expanding executive bill. All of these things, there is so much work to be done in opposing this executive and its continuing mismanagement, bringing Ghana to the brink of collapse. So I like the fact that Honorable Adams mentioned that, because that is the key thing here. It's a long way to elections, you people. So it's nice. It is really good. I think NDC has done a thing. I think the Council of Elders have stepped up. Of course, President Mahama was always going to step up. The elections is 18 or some are 2 years away, and we are in a big crisis. So I like what Honorable Adams has said about the work that needs to be done.
And just a quick point, especially as you make reference to the august House of Parliament, I'd just like to find out from you, looking at the role that the former president has played and the switch in leadership. Maybe I'll save that point. I'll come back to you, Kina. Let me first bring in Kofi Adams on that point. So looking at the role of the former president, John Dramani Mahama, do you feel this settles it?
Well, as I've said, an elder remains an elder. He's been the leader of the party as president and flag bearer at one point of the development of this party. And I must say, from 2008 till now, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has been in leadership of the party. He was selected as running mate in 2008. So from that point till now, he's been involved at the very top leadership position of the party. He may not be the leader constitutionally now, but that respect and honor is still given him. And especially when many persons address him as presumptive leader, you are also seeing a leader in him soon. So his voice, his pieces of advice is never taken lightly, especially when it is in sync with what the Council of Elders are also thinking and advising on a matter such as this. So he's intervened, and it gives indication as to who he is and what it is that he can do for his party and the country at large. And for me, I am happy that he did not sit aloof and said, well, I'm not in leadership. It's a matter for the party chairman who is the leader and maybe Council of Elders only as a group to deal with, which is, of course, a member. But he thought it wise to also engage these three affected persons individually. It wasn't only Honorable Muntaka that he engaged. He engaged all of them. Honorable Haruna, Honorable Muntaka, and Honorable James Kuite Abeji. And what has been put out there by Honorable Muntaka is a position shared by all these three. And so it's a good thing that he has done, and we are grateful for him for helping to deal with this matter even before today, because many were proposing that the ministry must come to Parliament today because their thinking was that there's going to be chaos. But thank God, we have leaders, we have elders, we have resolved our issues. Today, the chamber will be normal. There may be some congratulations here and there may be greetings here and there. People may make one comment or the other, but our side is a very solid side that is ready to do the work that we have been assigned by our persons that we represent from our constituency, right, and also our party.
This bit before I let you summarize your thoughts about what we can expect. Interesting, Kina, that you brought up the bit about the number of ministers and all that, and the pension. I don't know whether it was Kofi Adams who brought it up or Kina, but for all of you, I just want your quick reflection on this. I recall Dr. Atuforsen in that initial engagement with the media after the announcement had been made that he was the new minority leader, making mention of the fact that the minority would not approve any additional minister from anywhere. We do know the chieftaincy minister has, for good reason, stepped aside. His resignation has been accepted, and Dan Boche has been asked to act in his stead. But when we hear of the pensions minister, that would be an add-on, more of a burden, even as we deliberate on going to the IMF. But putting that side by side with what Dr. Atuforsen said, that they would not give any support for that person, they would not recognize any added minister, where does this leave this new person? Just a quick response, and then we will take your final comments. I'll start with you, Kofi Adams, then to Kina and to Dr. Akakpo.
I don't know whether the president will have the courage in this situation to create any new ministry. I doubt. I've seen a letter that is asked the Minister for Employment and Labor Relations to take responsibility for SNIT and other matters. I believe he can leave it at that. If he dare bring another minister to be responsible for pension, that will not be approved by this House. Indeed, many of us feel that some ministries should be merging. Look, why should you have, yes, we need to develop rail, but do we need a minister to develop rail network? We had only one minister for transport and a deputy. Look at the aviation industry, the transport industry, the development, the airports expansion, the seaports expansion, the rail project, the Tema to Mpakadan rail project was actually negotiated under just a minister and a deputy when it was just Ministry of Transport.
Right.
So it is only being implemented now. You don't need a minister for rail development, a minister for transport, a minister for aviation to see all these areas develop. Indeed, under John Mahama, communication and information was put together with two deputies. We can do something to save the pace of this country.
All right.
There are ministries that we should be thinking about merging in this critical situation.
Thank you for that quick point. Kina, what do you think about that? Some have said, for example, that even defense and the interior can be merged. Quick take on that before we take your final comments.
I absolutely agree. But look, it's bigger than that. You know, it's about a posture of a leader. In the crisis that we are in, one of the first things the president should himself have offered us to make us even feel better is to say, I am cutting down my government, and to have shown us deep cuts, stuff that were being let go. Instead of, So I agree with Honorable, and these are some of the things where we talk about when I keep coming back to representation because I'm a Dikro. But the point is, this is what we need. All Ghanaians, you won't find a single Ghanaian who's saying that our government is not humongous and a burden at a time where Ghanaians are heavily burdened and scared about the fate of this country. The president won't even offer that. He won't offer to cut down his government by at least 50% willingly. And he's not even doing it unwillingly. He's not doing it at all. It's been one of the measures a lot of people have talked about. Just a signal to say, I am ready, and I think cutting the public purse and the burden on Ghanaians is one of the things we must do to at least even send a signal that we are ready to do what we must do. We must also sacrifice. While you got us here, while I got us here, I'm going to sacrifice to get us out. There's been no signaling about that.
Right.
So there's a lot of work that this new leadership of NDC in Parliament must do. And yes. Yeah.
Let me bring in Dr. Kwapon on that point, and then in some 30 seconds each, we can wrap with our thoughts. But as Kina spoke, Dr. Kwapon, it brought to mind Lazarus Chakwera, the Malawian president. It just brought him to mind because he had, some 30-something ministers, and he's cut it down further to 20-something. I saw that recently. Here, we have over 100 ministers, and who knows whether we're going to add on. Quick take.
I think this is a subject matter that has been raised over and over again about the size of government, the need to cut down. At this point, though, I don't see that. I don't see that happening, and I think it's because from all of the signals that we've seen from the presidency, I don't see any intention. Maybe one of these days it will happen. But at this point, it's not one of the things that I'm banking my hopes on that it would actually happen. Yes, I know at some point the Honorable Finance Minister did announce some changes that they were making in terms of, cutting back on government expenditure fuel coupons, etc., etc. But in terms of the size, when it comes to the number of ministers, I've not seen any signal that it's something that is going to happen anytime soon.
Final thoughts. I'll start with you, Dr. Akakpo, in some 30 seconds. What do you look forward to as Parliament reconvenes and as we see the new face of the NDC's leadership?
So one of the things that I look forward to is how the Honorable Atuforsen would lead the minority caucus, in holding the executive accountable, in putting up quote-unquote opposition to the key issues that may come before Parliament. He has a very different demeanor and personality from the Honorable Haruna. And so it will be very interesting to watch and see how that personality plays out in being the new face of the minority caucus in Parliament.
Interesting thoughts, Dr. Kwapong, John Osai Kwapong, ACDD Fellow. Thank you so much for having joined the conversation. For you, Kofi Adams, your summary thoughts?
Well, it's going to be an interesting first meeting. It's going to be a meeting for what we call SONA, State of the Nation Address. Mm-hmm. So we will be expecting to hear from the president where he has brought Ghana to, from where he took it up from. And so we'll be ready for the president. I know from my side, the reshuffles have not ended. We are going to look at some committees because a lot of work is done also at the committee level. And the leadership have promised that they will be looking into reshuffling membership of committees and shift some from one committee to the other where they think that they may be more effective there. Look at the rankings and deputy rankings or chairs and vice chairs of some committees. So it's going to be a meeting that is short, but a lot will be happening. But don't forget also that we are also in the period of our primaries. We are expected to elect our parliamentary candidates by 13th of May 2023. So our side is going to be really, really busy. And so, Odikru, when you don't find us in the chamber, sometimes you must pardon us and not publishers.
That's a direct plea right there. Kofi Adams, thank you so much for having joined the conversation. Kofi Adams is Member of Parliament for Buim. Kina, are you going to accept this truce, so to speak? Oh, have we lost Kina as well? Hello? I think we've lost Kina Likimani as well, but she is programs manager with Odikro. All of them joined the conversation on the NDC. But moving on from there, when we return from the break, we're going to be contemplating the domestic debt exchange program. It's come with so many tentacles in terms of problems. Now, we have the individual bondholders who are still insistent that we want no part of this. Some banks have been said to have told some people that, look, this is going to not inure to our benefit. But after what Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta had to say about the need for us to actually get this deal done. He says, when you look at the final newspaper today, let's avoid further strain on the economy. Ofori-Atta rallies all bondholders to join the DDEP. What is it going to mean today, D-Day? We'll reflect on that after the break. Do stay.
These individual pension bondholders, some of whom can be seen with visible medical conditions, are united in one voice, a demand for total exemption from the domestic debt exchange program.
In fact, we want our money. We don't want to be part of this program. If he can't even pay the coupons, he should give everybody their money. Let us live our lives. Do you understand me? Because I don't have anyone to take care of me.
Some said Their survival and payment of medical bills depends solely on the coupons from their investment.
I invested my money because that is what I'm going to live on. I don't have anybody. As I sit, I'm not well, but I have to come and sit here, breathless, trying to breathe. And you've taken my money. I mean, this is unacceptable.
Convener of the Individual Pension Bondholders Forum, Dr. Edouan Anienchi, vowed the group will keep on picketing at the Ministry of Finance at least 1 hour each day until government listens to their demand.
We will continue to be here until we are exempted, regardless of the expiration of the invitation period. We'll continue to be here.
Are there any timelines you are giving the ministry?
No, the timeline is just that if today we hear that we have been exempted, tomorrow we won't come. If we don't hear, we will come tomorrow.
After some 15 minutes of dispersing for the day, the group was recalled to have an audience with the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. But their anticipation for a positive response from the minister was short-lived.
Looking at all of the categories, we say, well, these are retirees. Let's include those 59 who will be 60 this year and give them 15%. So the fight that we are presumably fighting here is a difference between 15 and 18.5%. The cost of that may be that we may not get an IMF clearance. The challenge that we have is that we have an economic crisis. We do have an economic crisis. And I think if people truly want the elongated bonds, that's easier to do. It's less burden on us.
Dr. Edouan Anienchi said the group will deliberate over the minister's response and act appropriately.
This is a section of, we were 5 that were left to come and address us. The whole forum, we will send this to the forum. This is what the minister has said. And I believe whatever the forum says will be what we are taking up. As at now, the forum hasn't changed the position. We are meeting this evening, and we'll take it from there.
Although it is currently unclear whether the individual pension bondholders will sign on to the current terms, they are expected to continue with their picketing tomorrow. James Kwesiaveji's report, right to you.
So that's the latest. We heard from Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta yesterday. But joining us for a conversation, Professor Charles Aka. He's an economist with the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research at the University of Ghana. We also have Dr. Saad Idrisu, economist, Louisiana Economic Development. They both joined the conversation. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. I do not know whether both of you are in the jurisdiction, but I'm saying good morning in case you are.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you.
All right. When you look at developments thus far and you look at the individual bondholders, both those from the Senyo Hosi and Martin Kpebu end who are insistent that we are not going to subscribe to this. I heard Martin Kpebu speak about this yesterday. And then on the other hand, you pick the pensioners or soon to be pensioners who say, we have toiled for this country. If you saw the placards, we have contributed our bit to Ghana. And now we want to rest. This is not how you pay us back. What is your quick take on their positioning before we even get to some of the other details? I'll start with you, Dr. Saad Idrisu.
Thank you so much, and good morning to all your listeners again. I want the particular picketing that has been going on since yesterday, and it's actually sad to say the least, considering people who are supposed to be home resting as retirees, dragging themselves all the way to the finance ministry to do all this picketing. So it's really a sad development, to be honest, and I think the government will actually have to look at it over again.
For you, Doc, what is your thinking, Professor Aka?
Yeah, Thank you very much. I think it's quite sad, and to be honest with you as an economist, I don't know how we conceived to self-inflict ourselves with even this whole idea of a domestic debt exchange program. Is illogical to me, and I don't think it's the way to go at all. So it's not just about the individual bondholders or the pensioners. The whole conception is totally, I think it's absurd. There's no economic sense behind the whole thing if you look at the impact that's going to have over the medium to long term on the economy. I don't think it's the way to go at all. But it's probably the easy approach, and we have not sat down to engage the brains that we have in this country to look at the alternatives and to do cost-benefit analysis, short-term, medium-term, long-term, and see whether this is the route to take.
So let's look further then into what the proposals have been for 59-year-olds and below, 10% with a maturity of 5 years, and then you look at, for those who are hitting 60 and beyond, 15%, that will be their coupon rate over 5 years. Do you feel with that, because that was not the initial agreement all the way from December coming into this year and now February, things have changed, and the finance minister referenced that when they picketed the finance ministry. Do you think, Prof, that this is a good enough deal? It's been sweetened enough by the finance minister for the pensioners to at least consider it?
This is to me, I guess.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah, thank you. Now, to be honest, and to be fair to the Minister of Finance, I think we are in a difficulty.
Okay.
And therefore they are taking desperate measures. And I think they have improved. The current proposal is a very good improvement over the previous one. The first one was really oppressive, and I don't know how they came about it. But this particular one seems to have made some accommodation. Nevertheless, the whole principle is wrong, and that is basically what we need to discuss. If you talk about even the banks and the insurance companies that have been coerced to some extent to accept it, if you talk to the industry players, they know the impact, they know the stress test they've done, and they know how this is going to impact on solvency, capital adequacy, liquidity, profitability. Jobs are going to be lost because operating costs for the banks, the financial sector, is huge. The cost-to-income ratio, according to the Bank of Ghana standard benchmark, is supposed to be anything below 70%. Most of the banks are operating cost-to-income ratio close to 90%. So, and even the central bank itself, if you check the balance sheet of the central bank, their cost-to-income ratio of the central bank itself is close to 80%. So the central bank itself is not really profitable because cost of doing business in Ghana is huge, it's high. And we are now living in a very high inflationary environment where food inflation has gone close to 70%. Average inflation is around about 54%. So today we are going to see increases in telecommunication charges. Banks pay a lot in telecommunication charges. Utility prices have gone up. Everything is up. They have to increase wages for their salary, the workers to be able to be productive. So the cost of the banking sector itself, an insurance company, is rising in this period. And yet their profitability is going to be compromised by this whole design of a domestic exchange program. So many banks, and what the Bank of Ghana is promising, 15 billion, whatever, emergency fund, is neither here nor there. It's inadequate. If they had that money, they should use that to pay the debt. So why do you want to imperil the financial sector and then promise them of an emergency fund? If the central bank has money that they can use to set up an emergency fund, let them come up with the money. After all, they are the central bank. It's the lender of last resort. They are the only institution that has the legal mandate to print the cedi. So if they cannot help us, and then they now impose such a huge cost on the financial sector, I'm afraid that the estimate that we see is that it's going to take us more than a decade or more, or probably a generation, to come back with a sound financial system again. And I don't think we need to do this to ourselves. But apart from that, the individual...
And especially, if I may chip in, on the back of the banking sector cleanup, which had its own ramifications, and the fact that we know that last year, 2022, lots of banks incurred losses, so to speak, where we are also missing our fiscal targets. It means it would really crunch, it would bite hard when it comes to this debt exchange, wouldn't it, as far as the banks are concerned?
Seriously, the banks are really impacted. Already they are struggling. You know, the financial cleanup affected a number of them. And during periods like this, when we are having global slowdown, GDP growth, consumption, investment, things are down, it's going to affect many of the bank's profitability. And there's going to be a lot of impairment and non-performing loans because people are already struggling businesses are struggling. So those who have even borrowed from the banks are going to struggle to pay. Now,
do you feel that could result in some of these banks going under, folding up?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's something that I wish it doesn't happen, but this is something that it's likely going to happen. Unless there's some emergency situation that's going to help resolve this issue, banks will fold up. If they don't fold up and they're able to still mobilize enough liquidity, what will happen is that they have to cut down their costs significantly. And I can only see the only culprit will be to lay off workers. So there's going to be huge retrenchment. And people are going to be unemployed. In such a high inflationary, high cost of living environment, people are going to lose their jobs. Already people lost their jobs during the financial cleanup, during the COVID, and then we now also face another job losses. The living standards are going to be affected, homes, school fees, and all of that. Then you're also looking beyond the banking sector. You're talking about the insurance sector. The insurance sector means you are risking the insurance sector so that people who have taken insurance, whether it's life insurance or whether it's fire or any insurance, basically they may not be able to have their claims. When you need to go for a claim, you realize that insurance, they don't have liquidity. They can't pay. So that's also dangerous. Then you now come to individuals. Look at these pensioners that went picketing. I mean, I think we should be ashamed. This is not a compassionate way of running a country. To see people who have worked 40 years, 35 years, 40-something years, contributed their quota, they are now living on their pension and getting some interest to buy their diabetes drugs and here and there to pay their utilities and things. And you want to imperil their sources of income. I don't think it's fair. I don't know why we need to do that, to be honest with you.
Dr. Idrisu, so the picketing has started. They say they will continue with that enterprise. But what do you think the implications would be for any groups that do not participate in the debt exchange? We've already been told that there could be some consequences for the old bondholders. What do you see to be the likely implications?
Well, first of all, I have said it on some of your sister platforms that I honestly don't just agree with the program, and I agree with everything that Prof is saying, because if you look at the whole thing, it's like the government is cooking you bitter soup. In the northern parts, we have this particular soup we call shuwaka. It's bitter leaves, made from bitter leaves. So the government is cooking you bitter leaves, right? Then at the end of the day, you complain. The government goes back and comes back to tell that I've added some fish into the bitter leaf soup for you. You complain again, he comes back, okay, I've added some meat into the bitter leaves. It doesn't change the fact that it is still a bitter leaf soup, which cannot be taken by the people who are concerned or the people involved. So no matter how the government comes up with new terms, it is still going to affect the individual bondholder. It is still going to affect the pension holder. And it's still going to affect the entire banking sector. And with the entire banking sector, the way Prof was saying it was actually right in terms of the liquidity and all that. And why is it so? It is so because if you take the Ghana economy we have right now, these bonds, majority of their investment is in government bonds. You know, based on the 2007-2008 recession that happened, it made government bonds the safest form of investment for these financial institutions. So they stopped even giving loans to individuals who come and rather invest in these government bonds. So right now, if government is coming back to say that they are not paying all these investments, interest and all that, then definitely we should expect a drastic impact, negative impact on the economy. Government may feel like, okay, it is doing all these changes to be able to restore the economy. But in an attempt to restore the economy, you don't destroy the economy. And again, if you look at that whole initiative that the government comes back with the 10% for under the age of 59 and 50%, it's still bitter leaf soup government is cooking. It's not going to change the fact that these pensioners will still be affected. And again, a lot of them make the investments. Some of them subscribe to 50-year bonds, some 20 years, depending on their retirement plans. Someone retires expecting that, okay, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, my kid will be going to college, university, and stuff like that. So whatever interest that I will be getting, that is what I will use to support my kid's education. Pensioner, that is probably their plans. Now you come back and you cut it short. So you realize that it's going to have an impact on them, including their families and all the dependents that are under them. So I think, the whole concept of the debt exchange program is actually bad, is ill-planned, and the government is even rushing into that. Again, the defense that has been given by government communicators is like, we are doing it to be able to secure an IMF bailout, which is the $3 billion over the 3 years. So if you look at this whole concept, it is like you are doing something to help your local economy just to get more additional loans. So at the end of the day, government interest is just to borrow more, create room for a good credit to go and borrow more. But that brings up the question, what happens to the existing borrowing government has been making over there? Let's be realistic. Because in 2016, by December 2016, our total public debt was around $21 billion. As we speak, by September 2022, the total public debt is $48.9 billion. So government has almost doubled the public debt within a short period of 6 years. So with all about $10 to $20 billion that you have borrowed in 6 years, if you couldn't do anything meaningful with it, what are you going to do with just $3 billion from IMF in 2 years?
Are you suggesting, are you of the school of thought that, yes, we've borrowed a lot, because like some would be quick to point to you, the Americans, for example, borrow quite a lot, but it depends on what they do with their borrowing. In our case, have we done enough with the huge sums of money that we've borrowed, not to even add the sums of money we got for free on the back of COVID-19?
Exactly. So that is why I'm asking that question. I don't want to say that the government hasn't done absolutely nothing and to look like it's just a podcast statement. But let's be realistic and look at what the government has actually used all that borrow for. What is the economic returns from that borrow? I was happy when the 1D1F program came along, and I was expecting that part of the government borrow will be using those industries so that at least we could get some exports and all that. But along the line, I threw up the question even to the Ministry of Trade to come out and even tell Ghanaians, each industry, how many people have been employed. Just one particular industry, how many people practically have been employed in the industry. What is their wages, or how much are we even getting from that particular industry? So if you dig deeper, it seems a lot of the borrowing that has been done has just been for consumption, but not for capital investment. And if you borrow for consumption without capital investment, then what are you going to get returns to pay back all the borrowing that you have been doing? And that is the situation that the government has put the entire country in, or the finance minister has put the entire country in. And right now, the poor retirees, as well as individual bondholders, are being asked to pay, excuse my term, for the recklessness of the government. or the recklessness of the finance minister. I think it is totally unfair, morally, religiously, either way you look at it, even constitutional. It is unconstitutional, even though our Attorney General has come back to retract his former statement of the whole program being unconstitutional and, could be sued and all that. But still, it is still unconstitutional. I think the government actually has to look at alternative measures, which some of us have been suggesting, but unfortunately, the government doesn't listen to some of these suggestions. Even the IMF that the government is going to, the IMF has alternative debt sustainability measures. And one of them is called the debt swap. Why is the finance minister not asking the IMF for that debt swap instead? Why is he just bent on going with the debt exchange rate? Because the debt swap has been implemented by countries and benefited still under the IMF debt sustainability program. So why is our case just different? And I will give you examples with cases of this nature. Even just currently 2002, Zambia implemented a debt for nature swap. So with the debt swap, you don't have to actually, go the tangent the government is going. You just have to find an organization that will be interested in like buying the debt or part of the debts that you have. They come in, they buy part of the debts that you have. So whatever interest payment that you will have been making, you will use that money domestically to help with domestic activity.
Right.
So let's say if government decides to go for, let's say, the Paris Club, right, to come in with a debt swap, one of their concern areas is environment or climate change. Galamsey is a typical problem we have in Ghana. The government could use that to negotiate a debt swap, which could be debt for environment swap or debt for nature swap. So at that point in time, they will come in and, buy some of the loans, depending on whatever negotiations or whatever the terms are. Buy those loans, whatever interest payment that we will have been making, government will not be making those payments. It will be put in a form of fund, use it locally to solve Galamsey issues.
Right.
There are so many debt swaps that are available. We have debt for health. Look at our hospitals. We don't even have beds in some hospitals in Ghana. Government could go in for an NGO that is interested in promoting health in developing countries to come in and do a debt swap for health. We have debt swap for education. There are so many areas that the government could look locally, pick our developmental concerns, and go in for a debt swap.
Okay.
It's better than hurting the individual bondholders, hurting the banking sector. Believe me, if you go one-on-one talking to these financial managers, the managers and the banks and all, they complain bitterly. But you know the sort of economy that we have. If any manager comes openly to speak right now, probably the next day they will go cleaning up his bank in the name of bank cleaner. So a lot of people are quiet, but deep down they are hurt. Deep down they know that this is going to collapse.
And that is quite a point you make. But before we wrap the conversation, I'd like to find out from you, Professor Akakpo. So listening to the finance minister yesterday, he says quite a number of things. He talks about the fact that this could jeopardize our prospects of international financial support, aka the IMF deal. If we don't get the parties involved to come on board, it could further strain government's capacity to honor key commitments, and we know them. It could also prevent a full-blown economic crisis if all parties come on board. But I am looking at some of the placards of the pensioners, and some of them read, "We don't want to be a burden on society. We want to live off our own bonds. We use our bond yields to pay our rent, medical bills, electricity bills, and water bills." Another one says, "Pensioners paid their dues to the nation." When you look at all of these, the question is, the finance ministry is gearing for at least 80% or more. Is that too far-fetched? And is that part of the problem, this all-encompassing narrative where they want to rope in everybody? Prof.
Yeah, thank you. So let's not forget that I think this whole domestic debt exchange program is an instigation of the IMF. So the finance minister is actually not independent finance minister at this moment. Is being manipulated and controlled by people from Washington, D.C.
But even in terms of going to the IMF, like Doc just mentioned, we could have opted for a debt swap. I mean, it's not set in stone, is it?
Yes, so that's why I agree. I think they have taken a very narrow view of our current problems. And I think that is the most unfortunate thing. I've heard people suggest that they should have a kind of consultations, wider consultations, a kind of a Senchi-like stakeholder consultation. I'm not aware, as an economist in the University of Ghana at ISA, I'm not aware that government has formally approached my institute or the economics department in Legon or the economics department in KNUST or UCC for any policy advice or any analysis to be able to help the government. Elsewhere, in countries like civilized advanced countries, even the president has a team of economic advisors who are professional, not politicians. The US government, Obama, current president, they have a team of well-known, reputable economic advisors to help the government. They don't come from a political perspective. They are professional economists that in situations like that, I thought that they would have even sat down with, not even with myself, but there are very senior economists in this country. Some of those who taught me. Okay, we talk about Professor Nezaite and co, and there are people there in this country, people who have been advising other countries. They travel all over the world. They even advise IMF, World Bank. Some of us, we have written things for IMF, for World Bank. We have been consulting over the last 15 years. So if this country has brains here, if you go to the business schools and the economics departments in this country, you will find a team of people that will sit with the politicians and can now discuss what is the way forward. We are already in a crisis. We acknowledge that. We cannot be blaming who brought us here, who brought us here. Let's forget about the politics. But we have a nation to build. We have a nation to build for our children. How many more years are we going to live? People like us, people like these pensioners. But for God's sake, we have children who are still in primary, nursery. What kind of nation do you want to build? Very soon, Ghana will be celebrating 65 years of independence. And we've been to IMF how many times? What kind of sustainable nation do you want to build? The countries that we started with, serious countries, have gone and left us behind. Some of them have never been to IMF for 65 years. Why do we think that we always have to go to IMF every 4 or 5 years? I don't agree with that. I think the politicians are not helping this country, and they should not think that they're the only people who have the brain to develop the nation. I think that there are several alternatives, and even the whole IMF program itself is not the first alternative. It's not the best alternative. And for anybody to suggest that when we don't have full participation in this domestic debt exchange program, this country will collapse, I disagree. It's a very narrow view. And if that's what they are thinking, it's better for them to get out, because this country must not collapse because of IMF. If the IMF did not exist, even the IMF itself can collapse. So are we saying that if the IMF collapses tomorrow, then there will be no more Ghana? I totally disagree. If you look at the scenarios, the problem that we have with this country now is our external debt. It's not domestic debt. The external debt is too high. It's been ramped up over the last years, and we don't have enough forex to finance it. We need to raise enough export to be able to finance that, and we have not been able to do that, and that is challenging us. And the country is totally dependent on import of crude, import of socially useless things, that we need to now look at how to save our forex, and then we can now build our reserves to finance that.
Right.
That is what we need to look at. But we decide to go to IMF. If you decide to go to IMF for 3 billion, just to balance your balance of payment, and they are now asking that for us to give you 3 billion, then you need to also cause some dislocation into your financial sector and cause your Ghanaians also to bear some of the pain. I totally disagree. That is the whole reason why they are trying to have a domestic exchange program. It's not because the government cannot finance the domestic debt. If you look at the domestic debt structure, you will see that this year, 2023, it's only about 37 billion Ghanaian cedis that will be due principal. The whole domestic debt is about 137 billion. Most of it will fall due from 2027. For 2023, all that the Minister of Finance need is to raise 37 to 40 billion cedis to pay this domestic debt that will be due.
Right.
And we can say that in this country, this blessed nation with oil, gold, diamond, bauxite, with all these resources that we have, Ghana cannot raise 40 billion cedis this year, even from property taxes alone. I've done an analysis. Property tax from Accra alone, Greater Accra region alone, can give us over 40 billion cedis. If we are serious to go to the real estate sector to raise property tax 0.5% on every property in Greater Accra, we will raise over 40 billion to finance the debt that will be due this year. If we cause all the self-employed people that are not paying their taxes in this country,
right,
and ask everybody to contribute their quota this year, we can raise more than 10 billion from self-employment taxes to pay our duty. If we decide to increase corporate tax by just 1%, we can raise more revenue to pay the domestic debt. We just have to be innovative. Next year, 2024, only 15 billion of the domestic debt will be due for repayment. 15 billion, 2024. 2025, 15 billion. So between 2023 and 2025, all that the Minister of Finance needs is 67 to 70 billion Ghana cedi in 3 years, under the time that we are under the IMF program. This is far more than the IMF is giving us. And we are saying that we cannot raise this money in this economy. I disagree. I think we need to sit down and have a wider conversation with academia, with experts, and we can discuss to see how to raise this revenue from here without derailing and impoverishing the financial system.
Prof, very interesting those points you make, especially in terms of what we could get from the property rates. And if you've seen the GRA's the banner headline in the Daily Graphic today, GRA MMDA's target 1.77 billion Ghana cedis, and you're talking in excess of 37 billion, what we could actually garner from that. But we're grateful that you took the time to join us, Professor Aka, and we wish you the best of the day. I'll take your concluding comments, Dr. Idrisu, in some 30 seconds if you can.
Yes, I will conclude by saying that the government will really have to get back to the drawing board, engage more stakeholders, as Prof said. I mean, even people who work at the IMF, some of them have been classmates to Ghanaian economists. So the government doesn't need to just look down on deals that have been issued out. Let me give you another example. Look at what is happening with regards to the gold for oil. How do you take gold out and import oil? When we have thermal oil refinery, that could help in some of our oil refinery in the country. Why don't you go out, look for partners who are interested in the oil business, get them, bring them, and get them in any form of debt swap so that it will be for debt for equity. Give them some equity in the thermal oil refinery. They will revamp the industry, then at the end it's going to bring in more foreign exchange for the economy. There are so many ways government will actually work with this debt swap that have been done by many countries. If you go to Egypt, for instance, they had that was in 2021, they had debt for water. They had a water sanitation crisis. They implemented it. So it doesn't affect the domestic economy in any way. It is a way of bringing in foreign exchange to your economy, foreign direct investment to your economy. Seychelles in 2015, they had debt for climate.
Right.
2015. I mean, I could go on and go on and go on. And again, the final thing I will say is that, I mean, no matter how much loans the government even goes to the IMF to get, or no matter how much domestic revenues we raise, if we don't seal corruption, we wouldn't go anywhere as a country. It doesn't matter which political power it is a government. Go and look at the Auditor General report. You'll be shocked. If 1.8 billion will get missing in 2021 through financial irregularities, I mean cash irregularities, almost 400 million. It tells you that we are just like a leaking bucket. No matter the property taxes we raise, no matter the loans we get from the IMF, it will leak away into politicians' pockets.
Point made. And so we have to...
You know, so we have to really get back as a serious country and stop just elections for election every 4 years. That is what Ghana has been reduced to now, and it is not helping the future generation.
Dr. Idrisu.
That comes in just wants to win power.
We'll have to sew up the conversation here, but we're really grateful that you took the time to join us with those very enlightening, refreshing thoughts. Dr. Saad Idrisu is an economist, Louisiana Economic Development. We also had earlier Professor Charles Aka, economist, Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research with the University of Ghana. Do stay with us. We're done with the first batch of conversations we planned for you, but coming up next, we're going to be talking precision, quality, and industry, and how this can reshape our entire business life, but the entire development structures of our country. Stay for that conversation. Up next on the AM show after the break.
Hello there, thank you so much for staying on the AM show. I'm Bernice Abubedu-Lansa. Earlier you saw my colleague Benjamin Akakpo delving into some of our big stories. Our next conversation is on precision, quality and industry as a tool for system and mindset change. And this is to help in creating wealth and jobs in Ghana. Ghana's economic growth has not created adequate number of jobs for the growing labor force. You know this is a conversation we've had all the time. The youth who make up more than a third of the country's population lack education and skills. Well, we've been joined today by the founder and CEO of the Design and Technology Institute, DTI. You should know her, Constance Elizabeth Swanica. Good morning to you. How are you doing?
Very well.
It's a pleasure to host you here. The last time we spoke about this, I hosted the boss of the Planning Commission, and he shared with us, you know, this grand plan of how you want to help young people be skillful and how you want as a nation for us to pay strict attention to precision quality. Tell us why this interests you so much.
Well, Bernice, I think for someone who has gone through industry in the last 23 years, one of the biggest shock to me was a lot of the jobs that I work on. I was working on projects, very high-end projects with mostly expat labor. And one of the questions that I asked them that why don't we have enough local artisans working on some of these projects that I was working on? And the question was answered by, well, we don't seem to have the sort of skill sets that we're looking for, the standards and the quality. And I think this is something that really struck me because I was working on projects and there'll be tilers from Italy or Spain, or, you know, you would have interior architects from Zimbabwe, and even if you look just next door, Togo, you know, a lot of the POP work and tiling work is all done by Togolese, and, you know, our tailors would come from Ivory Coast and Nigeria. And yet we have, you know, a crisis. Our young people are looking for jobs. And this went really back to the way I was trained in university, having done a skill-based course. But it was just, you know, paper or book skills. And I was working in an industry that demanded that I had competencies. I could demonstrate what I was capable of. And so this really led to me really pondering what had happened to our education. And so this really stirred my passion to really, you know, try to understand the root cause of why our young people are not finding jobs, because there's a skills mismatch. And industry, you know, are crying out that the sort of skills that our young people should have is what is missing.
So I'm sure this is what led to the creation of the DTI, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And so tell us what you do at DTI and how you are bridging the gap that you realized.
So, well, DTI was established to bridge the gap between academia and industry 25 years ago, I had to learn everything that I learned in industry, working on the factory floor. And I was in a university that didn't really have internships or apprenticeship, if I may call it, as part of the curriculum. And so 99% of my classmates all ended up in the banking sector. And only a few of us worked in industry. And that hasn't really changed much. In fact, I was talking to the Vice Chancellor of KNUST, my alma mater, which is the premier science and technology university, and only 3% of a student population of 85,000 do internships.
And so, it's not mandatory?
It's only recently that they realized that it has to be mandatory, because you have all these graduates that are coming out year after year, and industry really cannot hire them because they simply do not have the skill set that industry is looking for. And a few years ago, if you look at the perception of a young person like myself who was working in industry, we were looked down upon because I studied art, and were perceived not intelligent because we didn't.
I did visual arts as well.
Exactly. So we didn't study, the sciences. We didn't study any of the more prestigious subject areas, if I may say. And so this is what happened. But I went on to establish a metal fabrication company, Accent and Art, and we grew to become one of the market leaders in the industry. And that's when I realized that, we really need to look at the perception around working with your hands. Most of the time I actually do work with engineers, and I do work with architects, and I do work with people who are looking at us building things. And so most of the time you're reading blueprints and you're translating what these engineers have drawn. And half the time I tell them that, well, what you've drawn on paper doesn't make sense. Because a lot of the times when you start constructing and putting things together, that's when you really get a feel that, are the proportions correct? Or, did you even consider the weight of what you want us to produce? But we were never, at the table right at the designing stage because we simply couldn't sit with engineers, And that's when I realized that there's something fundamentally wrong. And so setting up DTI really is to bridge this gap because industry simply wasn't speaking to academia, and academia simply wasn't speaking to industry. And so that's what we do.
So this reminds me of what the education minister said during the New Year school about how students who are graduating from the university soon have employable skills. But
Exactly.
I'm just curious, did you always have this idea of precision quality, or you had to, on your own try to get it? Because like you've admitted, it's not something that we really teach in our schools. So for you, was it innate? Did it come to you naturally? Because as an artist, and I had colleagues who were naturally attentive to precision, just by nature, and there were those who had to be taught over time. So how did it come to you?
Well, I have a little bit of OCD.
Okay.
And then being a creative, you want everything to be really precise. And when you're working with proportions, you can't distort proportions. Right. Symmetry is symmetry, as simple as that. Even though people think that, you're creative, you can't simply be that analytically and science-oriented. But that's the thing about creativity. If you're building a chair, you must have 4 equal legs. It's just precision.
Right.
But having worked in industry and, hearing the complaints that, we didn't have the standards, we didn't have what industry was looking for, I realized that the artisans that I was working with were also the big problem because they produce things and 3 legs would be fine while 1 will wobble and, but madam, it's okay, we can take it like that. So I realized that, my goodness, it's a mindset. Everybody seems to think that if something is off by a centimeter, but it's okay. We can just put a piece of paper there and it'll balance and it's fine. And that's when I realized that, no, it's wrong, and the more I demanded that people did things precisely, I was the problem, because my expectations were too high. And I'm like, look, we're competing on a very global level. We have clients who have disposable income and want the best because it's their right to demand the best from us, That's when I realized that, there's something wrong with precision. And then we simply were also not paying attention to quality. And when, all of a sudden there was an influx of goods and things are, being shipped from overseas. You go to the Spintex Road and you can buy furniture and it's everywhere. And all the woodworking companies in Ghana, Kwaba, P Wood, all those fairing art, you know, they all started folding up because we couldn't even find timber. And people all of a sudden could buy nice things. It could be made of chipboard, but quality, you know? And that's when I realized that our companies and our industries were folding up and we couldn't compete. And so if we're going to kickstart, you know, our so-called industrialization agenda, it simply cannot be the, oh, it's okay, take it like that mentality. You know, so how do we as Ghanaians really advocate for a precision quality mindset? Because it's a soft skill, it's a mindset, you know? And so I put the two words together, precision and quality, and we actually then came up with what we called the mindset shift. You know, Ghana must adopt a precision quality mindset, and this cuts across all goods and services.
Right.
You go to a shop, you ask for something, and the shopkeeper is like, if you know you're not going to buy it, why did you ask me?
I'm happy
I
you
would
brought
walk
that
out
up.
and
I'm happy you brought that up because I was gonna find out from you how we extend the principle into the services industry, because for manufacturing, for creatives, we get the concept. But when it comes to rendering or offering services, then it becomes a challenge. People don't really understand what do you mean by quality service.
Exactly.
I entered a shop once and in Kumasi, and the woman said, she really knew what I wanted, but she said, Madam, next shop.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so how do we translate? How does a person who is sitting at the front desk of an office, for example, or how is that person who is directing traffic for a company, or helping people pack, how do they translate that idea of precision quality into service?
So that's the thing, you know, what people don't realize are consumers have rights. And so if there's 10 of you selling on the street, just for that alone, I'll go to the next shop. But if you're aware that if you give me quality service, you know, just being aware and deliberately aware, and that's when I realized that, well, there has to be a lot of advocacy. That this Christmas, you know, I was reading a few articles on social media, and we had a lot of tourists, but almost everybody seemed to complain about service. You know, so if you have tourists even coming to a country, that's the first thing they're looking for. If I'm going to be paying top dollar, you know, to go to a good, fine restaurant, I do expect that the same service that I'll find in Europe. And that's why I would visit your country. You know, so how do we then really advocate for a need that it just, you know, let's just look at things differently. Let's be deliberate, let's be intentional about these two words. And I feel that it really would unlock the potential of thousands of jobs in this country.
So the good thing is that this is not just sitting in your head. You'd created DTI, and then you've gone a step further to help us in creating a policy that will help in guiding the importation, the implementation of this principle that you talk about. But how are you able to achieve that within a short time, considering where we are? You know our country, you know, things can sit on tables for a very, very long time.
That's actually a very good question. You know, everything is about time. And, well, we've gotten to the point where there's a crisis. Young people simply are not finding enough jobs. And if you look at the current situation, that if we were producing more, you know, this imbalance of trade that we have. And so I guess it was just a matter of time, you know, 3 years ago, we partnered with the MasterCard Foundation to really look at the potential of unlocking jobs in the country. And so in partnership with DTI, we approached the NDPC. I had actually never heard of them, but through the work, we realized that, well, they're in terms of policy formulation. So we actually just walked in there and we said, well, we want to create a policy around, precision quality, because we feel that this must be made into a law.
Yeah.
Ambitious, right? But I think that sometimes, you know, being a citizen means that how do we practice citizenship instead of just waiting? And especially those of us in the private sector who always just seem to be sitting on the fence.
Right.
You know, consensus building and building a country means that you should be able to cross sides of the public sector. And they are the ones who actually make things happen. And so for me, that was such a big learning that you can't come together to co-create. And they had been looking for us, and we had been looking for them. And around the time, the Ghana Standards Board as well was also working on the policy standards bill, the Ghana Standards Bill. And so just everything just happened to work very well, that there were all these forces connecting. Yeah.
Now, so this is us as a people trying to industrialize, trying to take this nation to the point where we could be, you know, really self-sustaining and even for ourselves produce what is worth what people give us. So if I pay a tailor, for example, I should expect that when I take a dress off a shelf in a mall in Europe, the precision is the same. It's interesting, isn't it, that a dress that is not made to fit will actually fit you better than a dress that is made to fit. It's interesting. But there's a portion of the policy that's focused on ensuring that MSMEs produce consistent standards. Okay, so with the Ghana Standards Authority, for example, they try to introduce this system of weight cost. So if I bought a ball of kenke from Bukom and Osu, it should be according to weight and not someone determining per the size of their hands how much I deserve for 1 CD or 2 CD kenke. So we've identified that this is the gap. But how soon should we be fixing this problem? For you, and in relation to how quick we've been able to formulate the policy, and I'm talking about the real work, which is implementation.
So, you know, in the last 3 years, we've actually been working with the informal sector, which is, you know, the sector that I actually work in. And I kept telling people that you think that they don't understand because you assume they're in the informal sector. But have you bothered bringing this to their level? You know, and so in the last couple of months, and actually in the last 3 years, we have been working through the trade associations. We work in the markets, we work with master craftsmen, we work everywhere, bringing the concept of precision quality to their level. And it's very visual, demonstration, you know, through drama and local videos and playing the funny things that they do, and they think it's okay to them. And then they'll tell you, no, but it's not okay. You know, and most of the time it's just using simple tools. Did you use a level to just, you know, ensure that everything, you know, on the table would stand straight? Did you use a T-square? Did you know, just little things that when you then tell them that you have the, you know, opportunity to earn ×3 if you do things properly, then it begins to make sense to them, you know, because you show them outcomes. You know, so working closely with them on a, you know, on a TOT approach, training their leaders to in turn then train the artisans that they work with. We've created a movement that is spreading. And so they'll tell you that, you know what, we do understand precision quality because, you know, we work with the Greater Accra Market Association and the Queen Mother there. She tells you that, listen, now we have supermarkets popping up all over. And so if I don't improve the way I do things, we will go out of business. So now, you know, looking at how you package things properly, we're shipping yam all over the world, which means that if it means that I've scrubbed it properly, I've packaged it, I've weighed it, I've labeled it nicely, I don't have to be sitting under the sun and, you know, at the end of the day, my food will go wrong and I have to throw it away. You know, so all this translates into, you know, economy. And then it's just they understanding what the implications of doing things properly means.
I know there are people watching us who are getting interested as the conversation goes along, and they're wondering, I want this, I want to be part of this. How do they access you, or how do they join the movement, as you put it?
Well, what we've started is that, you know, in the next few months, and we're hoping that in the next, we can take this a bit further, that currently we're working in 4 different regions. And so coming on air, even having a conversation with you, you know, it's all part of the movement, you know. But I think that just being aware that when you're doing things properly, you do it in a, you know, be deliberate about being precise, be deliberate about and conscious about quality. And if you do own a business, maybe this is the time for you to reflect that. Am I doing things properly? You know, because my customer has rights. And you know, we do have the Consumer Protection Watch that means that if I bought something, I have a right to return it. That's the thing about, you know, shopping in overseas, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So far as the label is on,
you can always take it back.
You can always take it back, right?
Yes.
But here you take it back and you get insulted. And so if maybe we have 1 or 2 people suing and you know that it's my money and I demand it, then I think probably people then be more aware of people's rights.
But you know, the thing about this is that sometimes you can't really fault some of these artisans because they're just a reflection of what they know and how they were trained. So how do we translate the concept of precision quality? And I'm thinking down to the very basic level. I'm looking even at preschool. How do we do that so that even if, and I'm saying this cautiously, even if this generation has gone beyond help, we know that there's a generation that's coming that will change the story.
Actually, what you're saying is very true. So when you look at the Japanese society, they have a concept called kaizen. It starts at age 3. You know, so how do we then ensure that, you know, the next generation understands that, you know, or how do we inculcate, you know, generation that you wake up, make your bed, put your shoes where it's supposed to, you know, you go to school. In Japan, as early as 3, they're sweeping their classroom, they're doing things themselves. So you notice that the Asians are very, very disciplined. So, you know, having a Kaizen mindset is actually a very disciplined mindset. You know, the same as precision quality. So our African version of having a Kaizen mindset of just being conscious and being deliberate. But definitely, we would really want this to be taught in schools, should be taught in preschools, should be taught everywhere. So by the time you have a generation of, you know, young people coming up, they do understand the concept of precision quality. But we're hoping that, you know, it could be a top-up approach or a bottom-up approach, but definitely there's a need to begin to have conversations around precision quality.
And hopefully, for those of you who will want to, you know, take this a notch higher, you think that you want some help. I know, for example, that this policy is being communicated and translated to some of our technical schools across the country. So, and the other thing too is, you know, when you spoke about arts and how people, the perception and how people look down on people who do not offer courses in the hard sciences. It's also about how there's a drive now to let people train in proper skill, you know, programs and all that. So if somebody is watching us and, for example, they want to be like you, a creative, what would your advice be in terms of the kind of education they should look forward to or look out for?
I think one thing, and I would also say that, you know, we need to really push for technical skills. I come from that sector and I know the benefit of having valuable skills. But you know, when you look back to our colonial history, we were trained to be civil servants. You know, so we've inherited a colonial educational past that really didn't encourage building because they were really not interested in helping us develop. You know, and so that's why I'm very excited that the Ministry of Education really is really driving for TVET. But then the onus is on parents to really not understand that, listen, if I have a young person at home and I desperately want him to go to university and he doesn't really want to and he wants to opt for technical education, that is what industry is actually looking for. So if you want to work in the mining sector, the oil and gas sector, or most young people actually are entrepreneurs now because there's just not enough jobs. You know, how do we begin to have the conversations around skills, competencies, you know, not the degree, the paper that at the end of the day really, you know, won't end you with the job that industry really is looking for. So.
Right. So another thing you've been doing is to organize conferences, bring stakeholders together to have conversations. I know there was one at the Labadi Beach, was it? What was the outcome of that conference and how does it really link to the idea of trying to fit industry to the skill sets of young people?
I must say we've started a conversation that everybody's talking, everybody understands that there was a problem, but nobody actually had brought all the players into one room to begin to have conversations. And so we work with industry, we're working with Ministry of Employment and Labour Relations, Ghana Standards Board, NDPC, industry, academia, you know, the informal sector. And so when we have these conferences and we really engage, we always leave these conferences with the next steps. You know, so the first time we met, everybody agreed that, oh yeah, there's a problem, so what do we do? Then the informal sector said, well, we want training because we need to understand what industry is saying. And so that led to the beginning of the training, and then it led to the policy formulation. Now we've started working on what we call the labor market information systems, where we're looking at what should really inform a labor market. You know, so we're doing all these really exciting things that, and that's the thing about women, right? Talk less, do more. We actually do.
Yeah.
You know, not in a bad way, but just the fact that we've started something that we're really passionate about. And I think this is what really drives us, that we can actually see outcomes. And so I look back to the next couple of years where every shop would have a PQ logo, because you know that once you have that, you know, almost like TripAdvisor.
Yeah.
If I want to go somewhere and, you know, I just check the ratings of whoever is selling or offering a service, I know that I definitely will have precision quality behind it.
And I like the idea of the TripAdvisor thing, because it just hit me that for the past few years, Ghana has been marketed really well to persons in the diaspora, and people are coming here, lots of them coming in their numbers, because we've promoted Ghana as the destination if you wanted to come back to your roots. So how do you see us tying this into that whole agenda even of people coming back home and exploring Ghana as well?
Exactly. So that the next time we have them coming this December, we won't have people complaining about service and quality, because they do know that if I go into that and I see your ratings, then that means that that's more business for me. You know, so I would hope that people do really understand that it really translates into outcomes once you begin to understand that people really will pay anything for good quality service and goods.
Right, so I mean, your final words. Obviously, when you're hoping to change mindsets, you wouldn't expect it to happen with the snap of a finger. I can't imagine the kind of challenges that you've been through trying to even, in your own space, get this idea into the heads of the people you work with. But your final words to industry players, to educationists, to parents, everybody that matters, and why it is so important for us to really achieve this aim of precision quality.
Bennett, you know, precision quality is all soft skills. We've been talking a lot about the hard skills, but the soft skills are the things that you can't touch, feel. And so it's a conscious movement. You know, the fact that you and I can have a conversation and immediately, you started piecing things together. I think the conversation around why we do the way we do, the way we're socialized, really is the conversations around, let's look at the soft skills of why we do what we do. And of course, change is difficult, but once accepting that there's a problem and we've given you a solution, how then do we build on this?
Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Constance Elizabeth Swanekai, CEO of the Design and Technology Institute, the DTI. And she's been here today talking to us about precision quality, sharing her story, why she even created the DTI, and why it's important for you and I to embrace this principle. And in her wrapping up comment, I just realized that, you know what, it's not as hard as we think, especially if we start with the younger generation. We can get them to pay attention to precision. Put it here, do it this way, do it that way. And trust you, trust me, it will be a better society for all of us. Thank you once again, Mom, for joining us. While we continue our conversation, Benjamin Akakpo joins me and we get interactive with you right after this Tuesday. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Some 14 minutes to top of the hour. Benjamin Akakpo has joined me. Hello, Benjamin. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm okay. Interesting conversation.
Yeah, on
you
precision
had
quality.
Yes, precision quality. I was just engaging the woman before she came on air. You remember some weeks back she was on Newsfile. I really loved what she said about our country and the lack of focus, because every country is built on the things she speaks about, you know, vocational training, education, and everything else. So I'm really passionate about what she does, and it was really good having her on the show to interact.
Yeah, and I know one thing she said that hit me also was the fact that for a lot of private industry players, they only know about the problem, talk about the problem, but they don't make any move. And that's why even as a private player, she made a move, went to the NDPC to see how the problem can be solved. And for me, that is it. Because, you know, a lot of us sit on the fence, a lot of us are apolitical, but we have a say and a stake in the future of this country. Well, our first caller has joined us. Hello, Akonoba, how are you?
Philip and my friend, Benjamin.
Good morning to you. Let's hear you, please.
Yeah, you see, yesterday I made some allegation, and I think Dr. Ibusu is confirming it. You know, he asked a question that Dr. Ibusu, the one you interviewed, the resource person, he said, why is it that Kenneth Rata and President Akufo-Addo are not going for the option of debt swap, but rather debt restructuring? You see, when you go for debt restructuring, it makes some people poor. So if they don't have the mind, allegedly, to make me and you, Benjamin, me and you and our aunties in Volta and Kumasi and Northern Region poor, why then are they bent on doing debt restructuring? And you see, the Deputy Minister for Finance, John Kuma, I don't know when he became an expert in communication. His communication is making things worse. Last month, he made some comment on one of your, I think your station, was saying, I think he was trying to threaten the individual bondholders that if they don't sign on to the package, then they might not get their money. That's by what he has been saying. You see, and this guy, this minister, he should be careful with the way he speaks, because it makes things worse. I, for instance, I invested, and but you know what? Ghanaians fought Akufo-Addo and Kenneth Rata in 2024 because they don't have any clue, any idea as to how to manage this economy. Instead of to go for debt swap, we are going for debt restructuring. You want to make people poor, then you become rich. Okay, 2024, we are here. We shall see.
Thank you very much, Akonoba. And Benjamin, I mean, one of the things that the finance minister said, and I thought that it was quite interesting, especially when there have been concerns about the posturing of government. We saw him walk to meet the people and actually engage them in the full glare of the public and said, this is the situation. And he said, Wame, to wit, help me and let me help you. And there was this woman who spoke so passionately and said that, look, this is about us pensioners and how we live off this, we make plans of this. And so you need to exempt us from the debt restructuring program. We have a caller. Is it from Bawe? Hello?
Good morning.
Good morning. Please, your name?
I'm Ishmael.
Ishmael. Okay.
Yes.
Ishmael,
I want to talk on the GRA tax component on the property.
Property rates?
Yes.
All right.
With the GRA asking us to pay property tax, I would like to know if they started doing education on it to all those who are needing this information. Now, you want to educate the public. Have you collected the data to know the total properties that are to be taxed? If you know the total properties that are to be taxed, it is easier for us to know the quantity and the amount that is coming to the state. Now, the mode of payment, they are saying it should be cashless. Now, this is also going to cause double taxation. Already, I'm paying tax and using my mobile to pay the tax, which e-levy is going to be deducted. That is double taxation. So what are they trying to tell us as Ghanaians? Linking this to the same legislation, now some people's SIM are being also be taken off or blocked. Are we going to get the needed revenue? What is GRA saying? Double taxation and also preventing people from paying their tax through this electronic means. I'm really shocked that this is coming from our state.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Ishmael there sharing his thoughts on the property rates. But this was announced, I think, even sometime last year. We had GRA officials coming in to explain. But I mean, point well noted. I'm sure they will do further explanations and education on the new property rates.
Well, like I was mentioning this morning in the course of the review, people don't really mind paying more. What we mind is paying more and seeing even less done to our benefit. That's the major problem.
Kweku is our next caller. Hello, Kweku. How are you? Let's hear you.
I'm doing quite well. My challenge here is about the posture of the finance minister.
It's about the what?
It's as though, and government in general. It's as though we Ghanaians have brought this upon ourselves, and that we must, bear the brand somehow without any consultation. I get very hurt, okay? And about academia and civil society. When a certain section of society was drummed into our ears that this government was borrowing recklessly. I mean, it is always on social media, in parliament, as you can do, nearly drummed it home every day that we were borrowing too much. A day will come, we don't have buffet, our country must crash. Academia sat down, the middle class sat down, everybody sat down, and now we are here. And the government that has caused this wants to blame all of us and say, share the blame. How can we share the blame? They need to cut down on expenditure drastically. They need to cut down most of the projects. I am putting up a house now, but I've run out of funds. So I've told my family, I've run out of funds. I want us to stop the building until such time that we get some money, then we can continue. The family agrees with me. That is what government must do. Government must tell us that we must cut down. There are some projects that must hold on for about a year or two. When we get out of it, we'll go ahead. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you too for sharing your thoughts with us.
And I agree with him. Some you can't do everything at the same time. Someone came here to see me yesterday in respect of some of the discussions we've been having in recent times. And I told the person, I cannot fathom why our governments try to do so much with limited resources. We're talking about schools under trees and the rest. If we had a plan, we could say, look, my pitch, Ghana 4, I represent X party. We're coming to you and we want to focus on 5 thematic areas. This government is focusing on so many things. You promise heaven and you can't fulfill. Focus on some thematic areas and ensure that by the time you are done with 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, there's a clear difference between the start point and the end point. We want to do everything at the same time. You know what they say about shooting everything? You miss so much.
Emmanuel is our last caller. Good morning to you, Emmanuel. What would you like to share with us? Let's hear you.
Good morning. I want to say that
Emmanuel, can you please speak up a bit? It's quite difficult hearing you.
This Akufo-Addo's government is so insensitive, and Kenufuriata is also incompetent. When you look at what they're doing, they are mismanaging the economy, and also they are killing people.
Right, Emmanuel there sharing his thoughts, basically also talking about posturing of government. So, Benjamin, that's it for our show today, and interesting comments we received. If you missed any part of the show, please do well to get onto our YouTube page or Facebook page, JoyNews on TV. But before we go, water is life. Awake is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. We have the perfect sizes for all the purposes: 330 ml and 500 ml bottles to fit your pockets and bags, 750 for the heavy drinkers, and 1.5 liters for those who always want more. Our 19-liter jar bottles are ideal for homes and offices. All you must do now is drink Awake Purified Drinking Water wherever you go. Choose a bottle of Awake Purified Drinking Water today and get quality hydration. Awake Purified Drinking Water, one for life. Remember, for every bottle you purchase, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. It's another quality product by Casaprepa Company Limited. For bulk purchase, please call 026-235-1251. This advert is FDA approved.
And most definitely, this partnership on the AM show is multimedia approved. Have a good one.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Up next is News Desk. Do stay with us, your most credible news source. Take care.